And good afternoon, teachers. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat at happy holidays. No? It's a holiday and we know it's supposed to be resting time, no? Pero maraming salamat to our 178 live viewers as of the moment, no? Na sumasama po sa atin ngayon sa ating live stream for today. 197, just like that. No? Good afternoon, Teacher Pao, and good afternoon, Sir Jello, for this session. Napaka-special itong session to kasi very special din ang ating mga guests. No? Siyempre, pinagyabang. Good afternoon, Teacher Pao. Good afternoon,
Oo nga.
Jello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah.
Napansin ko lang, Sir Franco, nung speaker natin, nung nandyan sa parang nandyan rin parang lang, oh.
Parang pareho.
Parang pareho lang.
Parang pareho. May pinagkain mo. Labas mo yung susunod na poster, Sir Franco. Baka nandun din yung isa
Dapat pala nag-ano na ako, no? Dapat pala
nagganyan pa rin,
Oo. Hindi naman ako nasabihan, ano? Kailangan live yung ano natin, yung ating
Grabe. Pero again, good afternoon po sa
Good
lahat.
afternoon, yeah.
Grabe.
Okay,
Special yung mga batikan yung mga speakers natin ngayon,
Apo,
Talagang
yan.
Kaya parang natatakot na nung mga ibang mga webinars dati kasi mukhang lalagpas doon sa mga level na ganun.
Hindi, nakakakaba nga itong session natin for today kasi napakalaking topic kasi nitong pag-uusapan natin para sa araw na to. But hopefully we get to cover as much possible and at least we bring up a sort of like a discussion with our teachers. Kasi yun naman lagi sinasabi natin sa Jello, di ba? We're not coming into our session, especially kapag kami ang mga speakers, no? We're not coming to the session as the sole experts. Okay? We will not be able to deliver definitely everything that we need to know about this topic, no? But what we intend to do now is to actually to provide like a venue for discussion, to surface things that we have to talk about when it comes to differentiated learning. Kasi pinag-uusapan pero hindi laging na nabibigyang pansin. And I think that's one of the things that we'd like to clarify for today. So again, just taking off some pressure off our shoulders. We will not be coming here.
Maraming salamat.
Yes, totoo. As the sole expert teacher. So we invite everyone, just like we always do, to engage us into a discussion. No? Magtalakayan po tayo para sa araw na to. Your insights, your questions, your experience will definitely be very vital and important in this discussion, teachers. No? So please indulge us. No? Sana po matulungan nyo kaming mapag-usapan itong topic na to para sa araw na to. But of course, as your facilitators for today, we'll do our best. Okay? We'll try to provide as much as we can about this topic so that we get to know more about differentiated learning. But before we go to that, let's first have a very short, quick shout out to our teachers. And let's just greet some of them. Okay. I did not put a marker, Teacher Pao, Teacher Jello. So let's just start somewhere. Okay. Yan, tingnan natin.
Sabihin mo lang yung oras susundan namin.
Yes. Let's start around, syempre medyo okay, let's start here at 2:11. So yung start ng 2:11. Okay, so good afternoon, Teacher April Safra, Teacher Lilibet Naliana, Teacher Grace Baldovina, Veridiano, Teacher Jovi Argonza, Teacher Annalie Guevara, Teacher Ethel, okay, Teacher Charisse May Garcia, Teacher Michelle Nerona Spina, Teacher Jasmine Imperial, Teacher Cheryl Dilpiclar, and Teacher Madel Lisius. Good afternoon.
Yan. So we're also greeting Teacher Gaine Libasan, Miss Mary Ben Colina from Anahawan, Southern Leyte, Teacher Adeluisa Montemayor from Malabon, Teacher Annie Lee de Villena, Teacher Mayra Pua, Teacher Lazerna Bulawan, Teacher Laila Kulili, Teacher Aliza Ramos de Belen, Teacher Yesha, and I'm not so sure if she's a girl or she's a woman or a male, but she's from Nothing Impossible, from Malaysia.
Yun. Ayun. Sige, tuloy ulit natin. Good afternoon rin kay Ma'am Melissa Parco from the province of Iloilo, Sir Renante Almoge, Ma'am Yolanda Fajardo, Ma'am Marilyn Ongkiko, Ma'am Farah Eva Lugto, Ma'am Geraldine Soresca, Sir Eli Austria, Ma'am Juela Giriba. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Ma'am Sonia Yap, Ma'am Glenda Agayan, and Ma'am Jen Ayes from Caloocan City.
Yun. Thank you. Maraming salamat. No? And of course, no, we'll try to get the other teachers later on as we continue with our session. Okay? So siguro no before tayo mag-start no we'll first contextualize of course no and share with you the flow of our session for today. And siguro yung unang-una natin dapat ditong i-mention or pag-usapan kagad natin later no during our discussion actually demystifying differentiated learning at saka yung tinatawag nating different learning styles no. Kasi before I've heard no at may mga nabasa na rin ako that they're actually claiming or they're saying that learning styles is actually a myth. Okay, na hindi naman dapat tong masyadong pinag-uusapan ano. Pero sa totoo lang, it's a myth because sometimes you do not truly understand how and what learning styles are for. Okay? Meron tayong tinatawag, Teacher Pao, no, Teacher Jel, yung tinatawag na blanket, no, understanding sometimes ng learning styles, and sometimes naka-decontextualize yung understanding ng learning styles natin, at hindi siya properly integrated into our curriculum. That's why people would say no, na meet at saka hindi talaga na ano no na-affect yung learning outcomes natin. Mamaya lilinawin ulit natin yan kasi syempre no pagdating talaga dun sa connections between learning styles and learning outcomes, isa pa yun sa mga pagkakamali natin na we think that whenever we address learning styles, okay, we can already directly impact learning outcomes. Mamaya pag-uusapan ni because that's one of the things that we'll have to demystify no and they also to clarify later in our discussion. As for our flow for today, we'll be talking, of course, no, several things. Okay, so we'll start off with what is the differentiated learning that will be discussed by Teacher Pao. I will proceed with our second topic for today, which is different learning styles and preferences. And Teacher Pao and I will collaborate on how do we differentiate learning. Okay, as we address no and as we connect with the different learning styles of our students. And of course, Teacher Pao, no, we'll try to end our session today with sort of like contextualization, okay? Because of course, no, you'll really have to expect that some of the readings that we base our references on, of course, no, even our trainings as teachers, okay, are actually based from a Western perspective and therefore, okay, sort of like out of context at times, okay? So that's the reason why we're going to end our session today before we we have the open forum to discuss on some realities in the Philippine education, which might be an obstacle for differentiated learning. Okay, so again, what we're going to do now is not to put pressure on teachers. Okay, that's the least that we'd like to do. Okay, we don't want to like to make you feel pressured na hindi ko to nagagawa, kailangan ko tong gawin, something like that. No, what we're going to do now is to actually simply to create a discussion. So hopefully next time, no, as we progress, no, as educators, we'll have more opportunity to address the needs of our students. Okay, because technically, attending to the different learning styles is attending to the different needs of our students. Okay. So, Teacher Pao, let's maybe we could begin now. Sir Jello, do you have like questions first or things you'd like to say before we open our session for today? Or maybe
Ako,
reminders to our audience?
siguro ako, Sir Franco, I'll just second that kasi I also heard that that particular thinking na myth nga siya. Pero siguro nga it's more of the way we understand it and more of how we will really contextualize it. And at times I think this is also a good opportunity baka kasi tulad ng mga previous series natin, previous webinar, minsan the more that we want to be inclusive, baka meron tayong na-exclude din na ano. So I think it would be a good opportunity talaga to explore this one. Reminder, wala po kong na-receive na na introduction. Baka kasi video yata ang introduction. I don't know eh. Wala ba? Okay.
I think kailangan ng introduction no? We're gonna get into our session right away kasi familiar naman na po sana kayo sa mga speakers natin for today. No? So again, the first part no, will be handled by our very own Teacher Pao. Okay, so Teacher Pao, the floor is yours now. You can now share your screen.
All right. Okay, this is actually something new to me. Iba pala yung feeling na ikaw magsasalita. No? Na ikaw yung may pa-share screen, ganyan. So, yan. Good afternoon. No? So, yeah, I would like to thank Teacher Franco for doing that introduction. No? So, in this session, we will really get to know. I think, of course naman, no, as educators, we have heard this, definitely. No? Hindi pwedeng zero info, 'di ba? Hindi pwedeng zero info on differentiated learning tayo. Narinig na natin, nabasa na natin, pwedeng actively ginagawa natin, pwedeng naaral natin, ang daming seminar. The question is, have we been doing it inside the classroom? So, that's where I'm going to start my session. So, wala na pong intro-intro yun. No. Thank you so much, Angela and Sir Franco, and I'll see you in the background also later. Okay, so good afternoon, dear kaagapais. Just let me know if you're hearing me properly. No, so I will be able to present my peace of mind when it comes to differentiation. So at any point in time, you may share your thoughts about our discussion. Okay? All right. So let me just again put us into the overarching topic that we have for this month of August, no? Inclusivity in education. So basically, inclusion is an ongoing process that aims to increase access and engagement in learning for all students, no? For all. Okay, hindi sinabing isa, hindi sinabing dalawa, hindi sinabing some, but for all, by identifying and removing barriers. So, as I start my presentation, I would just like to request everyone, all the educators watching, to maintain or adapt a growth mindset in this session. So as I've mentioned, I'm very sure you have been doing this, you have been exposed to this, but what we would like to adapt is a growth mindset. We know that we are experiencing challenges, no? So, at the back of our minds, pwedeng ang iniisip na natin is, ang hirap mag-differentiate, kulang sa oras, ang daming kailangang topics, kulang sa resources, limited ang interaction, and so on, no? But when we try to maintain a growth mindset, this is where our openness comes to play. No, our open-mindedness come to play. No, what can we do about these challenges? Kasi some of these out of our control na. But the question is, what is within our control as teachers, as educators? So how do we adapt? No, so I hope we maintain that all throughout. No, kasi I'm sure you'll be bugged by hindi kasi kayang gawin to dito sa amin, hindi siya mag-work dito sa amin, and so on. So titingnan natin ano yung pwedeng mag-work. No, because this is exactly the same idea or the same mindset that we want our students to achieve or to adapt, no, while studying your lesson, no, while grasping your discussion. No, hindi po pwedeng yung bata mag-stay na lang siya na, teacher, hindi ko kasi talaga kaya itong gawin. Kasi hindi niya na magagawa, di ba? No, so our goal is to maintain or to adapt a growth mindset. Okay? So ganito pala to, no? Hindi ko kayo nakikita. Sige. All right. Later, if I stop my presentation, I'll be able to sift through all your comments. Okay. So as I've mentioned, no, we are actually increasing access and engagement, and it's an ongoing process. It's not a one-time thing. No, differentiation is not a one-time thing. Okay, sige, sa topic na to magdi-differentiate ako. Dun sa next topic, hindi pwede. No. Okay? It's an ongoing process. No, because what we are actually building in our students are actually skills. No, these are not things to memorize. Okay, these are skills that will help them adapt to real world. No, if what you're teaching is you're not convinced that it's applicable to the real world, why teach it? No? So we have to make sure that it's an ongoing process. Okay. So it's actually an organizational paradigm that involves change. No, it involves change. Continuous process of increasing learning and participation among students. So syempre, ang baon natin dito, your experiences of students. No, what are the challenges? Because that's what we want to address in this session. Right. Next, inclusion addresses the learning support requirements and questions, no, the broader objectives of education. Okay, the learning also. Okay, is it gonna work? Okay, kaya 'di ba ang DepEd naglabas na rin ng MELS kasi ito yung napaperceive na ito yung mas kakailanganin nila to go sa real world given these limitations. Kaya may adaptation tayong ginagawa. 'Di ba? And this is actually an educational approach which all schools, and I'm sure you are actually aspiring, no, for your school to also have. Okay. So inclusion is actually facilitated in a culture of collaboration, mutual respect, support, and problem solving involving the whole school community. So you cannot differentiate if you're the only one doing this. Okay? You cannot include if you're the only one doing this. No. Everyone must be involved, from students to parents to teachers, of course, to the school admin primarily. No, it's a whole school community, and this is actually based on the document published by the International Baccalaureate Organization on Learning Diversity and Inclusion in the IB programs. So just a side note, no, wala kaming intro no, pero for just so you know where I'm coming from. I'm currently the International Baccalaureate Diploma Program Coordinator of our school, Immaculate Conception Academy. Was running the program for 3 years now. Okay, so it's an international program na pagka kasi narinig minsan yung IB, hindi, pang ano lang yan, pang matatalino lang yan. No. Okay, it's actually for everyone. Okay, so there. So that is my introduction to what differentiation is. Okay, so differentiation is actually designed to meet the needs of all learners, no matter where they are in the spectrum. But we have to remember that we do not lessen the opportunity for them to be challenged. No, sometimes when we do differentiation, sige, hanggang ito lang kaya mong gawin, o sige, hanggang dito lang tayo. Okay, we should not, no, we kasi nga growth mindset eh. At this point, ito kaya mo, so magsa-scaffold ka, so you can still move on to reaching, no, higher expectations. No, we don't put limit to the rigor that we give to the students. No, we don't stop challenging them. No, so when we talk about differentiation, there are actually different concerns. No? Ano yung mga concerns na yun? Number 1, lowering the rigor for struggling students. Nahihirapan siya. Sige, yung madali na lang ibibigay ko sa kanya. Pwede ba yun? Is the student being challenged enough na, sige, ito lang eh. Pwedeng yun ang simula kasi yun ang na-identify mo. But do you stop there? Okay, do you stop there? Next is giving less attention to gifted and advanced students. Okay, students not being challenged. Okay, most of our schools, of course, are hetero. No, hetero talaga yan. You have different skill levels because you want to get everyone, no, get everyone on board. Sometimes those in the advanced level are not challenged anymore. No, so Kasi mahuhuli naman yung iba kapag binigay natin. But what still can you give to these students who are actually advanced? Huwag natin kakalimutan yun, no? Kasi minsan talaga parang, sige, remediation, pero paano naman yung mas meron palang kakayanan, no? Way beyond the year level that parang advanced talaga siya, 'di ba? All right. And of course, trying to manage everything that is needed for implementation. Diba? Yung mga brain cells natin ngayon, I'm sure, paano mo gagawin? Paano mo to pagsasabay-sabayin lahat? But it is possible. No, it is actually possible. Now, when we talk about differentiation, I'd like to focus on the word differentiated learning. Okay, differentiated learning. So, if you note, okay, buwan ng wika tayo di ba? August. Okay. Different is iba-iba. Okay? Differentiated, pinag-iba. Okay? Anong difference nung dalawa? Anong pagkakaiba nung dalawa? Iba-iba, different talaga siya. Pinag-iba, there is that conscious effort to change. No? To modify. Right? From, if you were here last Wednesday, last Thursday in our sessions, and I'm sure majority of you were, it has been stressed that differentiation is actually intentional. Okay? Mamaya, I'm sure kapag ka nag-present kami pareho ni Sir Franco ng mga activities, or ng mga when we lay out the different foundations, you will say, ay, ginagawa ko naman yan sa klase. Ay, nagagawa ko pala yan sa klase. If that is how you thought of it, ay, nagagawa ko pala yan sa klase. It's not intentional. Kasi ngayon mo lang na-realize. Pero if your statement is, ginagawa ko yan sa klase, that is being intentional. No, that per se, sure ka na ito kasi yung nakafocus ka na gawin. Ito yung gusto mong mangyari. Okay, whereas you're just, it's the difference between reacting and responding. Kasi pag nagre-respond ka, pinaplano mo muna kung paano ka how you will handle the situation. But if you're just reacting, it's incidental. Kasi andun na eh. Diba? So, those are the things that we might have concerns on. All right. So, kanina, sabi ni Sir Franco, merong myths on learning styles. No, ano ba yung myths about differentiation? So, let's just look at that. Students will be unprepared for tests. If we differentiate, they will not be prepared for tests. Okay. Just do your own mental checklist. No? If you have a pen and a paper or a gadget with you, or if meron kayong photographic memory, okay, how many of this do you still believe? Okay, differentiation equals individualization. Okay, the third one, differentiation means unbalanced workload. Right. The fourth myth, lack of mastery at the same time as classmates means lack of credit. Hindi sila sabay-sabay. So, hindi dapat same yung maibigay sa kanila. I taught it, it's up to the students to learn it. Bahala kayo dyan. Right? Students won't be able to compete in the real world. Okay. Kasi ito na yung sinasabi natin na nagwo-water down. No, nagwo-water down even the rigor. No, even the rigor when you differentiate. Then if we don't differentiate, students will toughen up. Naniniwala ba kayo dito? Di, kasi mapipilitan sila eh. Kunwari, nasa classroom kayo na may struggling na student. Dito, bibigay ko para mapilitan silang sagutin. That way, ito yung mangyayari sa kanila. But do we actually know where they are actually coming from? Why they're not performing the same? No? And then there is only one way to differentiate. And I think with everything that you've been doing inside your classroom, you know that this isn't true. Okay? And that differentiation means students are grouped by ability, At all times. Sorry, naputol. At all times. Okay. Pag in-group ba natin sila at all times, will they learn at a maximum, will they be able to reach their maximum potential? Okay. And then, I can't implement differentiation because it takes too much time. Okay. Totoo ba na kumakain ng oras yung differentiation? Diba? Totoo bang kumakain ng oras yun? Okay. So, given that, no, these are myths. Okay? Pinaniwalaan natin siya po pwede dati. Pero sana at this point, we open our minds that these are the myths. Okay? Ide-debunk natin siya. No, ide-debunk natin siya by looking at different ways, no. Paano mo ba mape-prepare kahit nag-differentiate ka? Okay? When we talk about differentiation equals individualization, it's not, no, it's not preparing the same individual plans for each student. Okay, iba yung individualized plan sa differentiation. Na? And then, differentiation means unbalanced workload. So, dahil nag-differentiate ka, ibig sabihin ba nun, mas marami yung gagawin ng mas magaling kaysa dun sa hindi magaling? Or yung hindi pa nare-reach yung competency? Okay? Ito yung sana hindi natin magamit yung term na na-baby yung student or na spoon-feed yung student. Okay, when we do our differentiation. And then and all the means that has been presented. Okay. Now, ano ba yung vision natin of a differentiated classroom? So, I have been referring to a book entitled The Differentiated Instruction Book of Lists by Jennifer Fox and Whitney Hoffman. There are a lot of things on this book, no. You can actually access it in the web later. I'll try to get the link, but it just gives you a list of all the endless possibilities of how you can actually differentiate the classroom with the vision that, number one, students are engaged in learning, no? Engaged in learning. Students ask many questions and feels safe questioning. Hindi yung mararamdaman ng bata na ayoko magtanong, baka mapahiya ako. If this is still happening in your classroom, then we might have to really have that change in mindset. Because after all, katulad nga natin ng mga KTS, no, sabi nga ni Sir Franco, I am not an expert in differentiated instruction. So kung meron kayong different views, different perspectives, may questions kayo, put that in the chat box. No, because that's where you create a culture of collaborative learning. No, where everyone feels safe arguing but not fighting. You can go on and on with different perspectives but still maintain a healthy environment. No? Ang pinakaayaw nating mangyari is may isang experience yung bata, nagsalita, napahiya, binitbit hanggang tumanda. Na ayaw ko nang magtanong. Kasi baka mapahiya ako. No, it's a very common experience of a student who just withdrew, no, from learning. Okay? And the third one, of course, the student feels a sense, no? Students feel a sense of belongingness. Part ako ng class na to. Kahit nahihirapan ako or kahit ako yung pinakamagaling or nasa middle ako in terms of my ability in this subject, belong ako. Hindi ako nahuhuli. Hindi ako mahihiya. No, kasi ito kaya nga ako nasa school eh. 'Di ba? Kasi mag-aaral. No, we are not actually assuming that they know everything. And we know our students. No, I hope we know our students. Then the fourth one is students actually become accountable for their actions. No, think of it. Siguro pikit kayo. Makikita nyo ba to sa loob ng classroom mo? Kung hindi, what are the points that we still want to improve on? No? And then, students know what is expected of them. Hindi blinded. No? Hindi, ang expectation lang sa akin maka 93. Whatever it takes to get a 93, I'll do it. No? But really, know what is expected of them. Ano ba yung quality expected of them? No? So it's, and part of it, no, for this to prosper, for this to what do you call this? Come to life, we need our teachers. Okay? And what should the teacher have? Number one, there is a clear plan for time spent in class. Hindi pwedeng nakalist down lang yung topics, okay, I'll discuss this and this and this. That's it. Pero hindi nakalagay yung, ewan ko, well, when I started teaching, I did, nung nagpa-practicum pa ako sa UPIS, I did daily lesson plans na may minutes. Familiar din naman kayo doon. So, and it really helps. No, kasi alam ko kung kailan anong mangyayari. Pero at the same time, flexible ako kasi nga, depende yun kapag kakaya ng bata or hindi. No? Pero meron kang allotment. Kung kailan ka mag-activity, kailan ka magkakaroon ng collaborative plan, kailan ka mag-assess. No? The second one is that clear instructions are given to students in collaborative activities. Okay. Catch yourself when you say, all right, so this is our task, this is the directions, okay, I'll break you now into groups. Pinabasa sa bata. Hindi in-explain kung paano gagawin yung collaborative activity. Unless sanay na, no? Pag sinabi mo, okay, pair work, or okay, you implement, what do you call this? One will be a listener, one will be ganyan. Kung sanay na sila, kung may code na kayo. Pero kung wala, you have to explain. No, you have to explain to them what has to be done. No? In our virtual setting right now, kung ang setup natin is kaya nyo mag-online, tapos magbe-breakout room kayo, never, ilang beses na nasabi sa lahat ng webinar, never just leave them to breakout rooms without clear plans. Okay, without clear instructions. Kasi, mind you, dalawid mo yan, may hindi nagsasalita. Or may isa lang na nagsasalita. Or individual lang din silang gumagawa. So walang silbi, na-defeat din yung purpose ng collaborative activity. Okay? At nadalawin mo sila, syempre. And then, learning time is divided in small chunks with checks in between. If you have a 40-minute or a 50-minute synchronous period, kasi usually ganun lang naman, no? Medyo mahaba na nga yung 1 hour or 2 hour, 1 hour 30 minutes or 2 hours na learning time, no? So you have to make sure that you have small chunks and you check for learning in between. Okay? As in, meron kang designated na i-check mo. Hindi lang, kamusta na kayo? Okay? Meron ka talaga nakaplano how you are going to ask, no, the students. And then, of course, the teacher works alongside with students. Okay, we don't just stand in front there and teach, deliver, actually lecture. Okay, because in a differentiated classroom, you really work alongside with students. Okay, where they are. And then, of course, ito yung nasabi ko kanina. Students should know what is expected of them. So para mangyari yon, the teacher should present examples of excellence and rubrics, okay, to students for mastery. Meron kang exemplars na ipapakita. Ito yung maganda, ito yung model. Pag sinabi rin nating work alongside with students, kung may ipapagawa ka sa students, siguraduhin mong nagawa mo din yan. Para alam mo kung gaano kahirap or gaano kadali pwedeng magawa yung task. Okay? I'm very sure, no? We are so fond of asking students to do assessments, creating videos. Okay. Pero I myself, as a teacher, has never made the video. Can I expect that from my students? Basically, no. Kasi dapat, as a teacher, you know the skills na gagamitin nila na to facilitate learning. Mamaya, yung lesson mo pala, hindi man kailangan ng video, pero yung bata, ang nag-focus siya sa paggawa ng video, pero hindi dun sa content mo. I hope you get what I mean, no? Na ang focus natin is on the target skill. I got this from Teacher Therese, no? For the Dr. Bustos. Access skill versus target skill. No? Yung target skill dapat nandun yun. Hindi siya dapat malimit ng access skill dahil lang hindi marunong gumawa ng video. Pero of course, whatever we ask of our students, whether to write essay, to do things, just as in any in our content, we require our students, or we hope that our students will get our content. Kasi alam din natin yung content na tinuturo natin. No, and even the ways by which they can present. So, kung yung method na yon na nakikita ninyo, you have to make sure also that you are able to do that as teachers. Okay? All right, just let me know. Wala pala ako, hindi pala ako naka-dual monitor. Okay, sige. All right. Okay. So how do we provide modifications in the differentiated classroom? Okay? So there are 4 areas to be modified. Originally, we have 3, no? Content, process, and product. But eventually, nadagdag pati si learning environment. Okay, so what are the modifications, or where can we have our modifications? So for content, it's actually what the students learn. Knowledge, skills, and understanding. So maraming aspects tayo pwedeng pasukin when we want to talk about differentiation. Then process, how students learn. Okay, so this one is on instruction and delivery. And then the third one is the product. How students demonstrate understanding. So basically, this is the output or the assessments that you have. You can also do differentiation on this. And then the learning environment. Where students learn. I think very key factor ngayon to. Kasi nga, nasa iba-ibang setup tayo. May online, may mix online, modular, may modular pure, no? So where students actually learn. What is the setup sa bahay, sa school, and then the community, no? Sinong kasama? Okay, so how do we actually differentiate that? So these are the areas where we can do differentiation. What is our basis for modification this time? No, saan tayo magmo-modify? Number 1, okay, readiness. You can vary sa readiness, okay? It does not actually represent ability. Rather, it's a changing state of skill level. No, hindi nating sinasabi na hanggang kunwari levels, 'di ba? Alam ko na. Yung level ng ed puzzle, 'di ba? May level 1, may level 2, may coach. Hindi natin sinasabi na hanggang level 2 ka lang. You don't vary na hanggang level 2 lang. Yung readiness niya to take level 2. Kasi after nun, meron ka pa namang coach. Pero kung ready na siya sa 2, go ahead. Kung di pa siya ready maging coach, then wag muna. Okay? And then we can also vary by interest. And how do we actually do that? We have the areas of interest of a student. Okay? And then, learning profile. Okay? I'm sure Sir Franco will discuss we'll discuss this in depth. Now, learning profile. What are the preferred ways of learning, which include the learning styles, the multiple intelligences, the gender, and the culture. Okay? Because these are the things that talagang nagbavary. No? The important thing here is we should know our students. Okay? So as I've mentioned, if you remember a while ago when I described what differentiation is, it's actually yes, trying to meet the needs of all learners without, suffering the rigor. So how do you differentiate the content? So in terms of expectations, so meron kang expectations na nilalagay. In terms of process, what are the support that you can actually give to the student? Parang ano lang yan pagbabike. 'Di ba? Sa una, 3 wheels muna. Tapos 'di ba may mga nilalagay-lagay pa sila kapag mag-aaral ka, pero after nun pwede na bang tanggalin? So, 'di ba? So that's how students learn, no? Pero what is the support that you can actually give. And for the product, okay, how do students actually demonstrate learning? No, there are different ways to actually demonstrate learning. Okay. All right. So later, okay, so I at this point, no, I will stop sharing my slides, okay, because at this point I've now joined by Sir Franco, no, after I've presented the basics maybe of differentiation, or nirecall natin yung college, no. Sabi ko nga kay Sir Franco last Wednesday, while I was listening to Teacher Therese, para akong nag-flashback na nasa loob ako ng classroom ng college at nag-aaral ng ng lesson. Diba? It's something, it just this is just a bit of a refresher, no?
Indeed,
So
no?
Sir Franco?
Tama, no? At by the way, Teacher Pao, no, gusto ko lang i-commend yung ating mga audience right now sa ating chat, no? Sobrang active ng chat natin. Sobrang daming insights coming from different educators, trainers as well, okay? So I hope that we get to continue that, because again, this is a very vast topic, no? Tsaka magkakaiba ng mga perspectives. What Teacher Pao presented is just one of the many, no, ways of looking at differentiated learning. Okay? Kaya lang, Teacher Pao, gusto ko lang bago ka gusto ko lang mag-comment dun sa isa sa mga na-mention, which is on it being a process. Okay? Because I think, no, that's one of the most important way, no, to demystify the idea of learning styles, no, or attending to learning styles. Okay? Kasi sometimes, no, ang nagiging result, no, kapag nag-attend tayo, okay, or we're addressing different learning styles and preferences, that we're sort of like stereotyping a particular students. Okay? And isa nga sa mga na-mention mo sa mga meets kanina is that, are we grouping them? Because if we are grouping them, we're actually excluding them, essentially. And that's what we don't want to do. Okay? So what essentially, no, if you like revisit the ideas that were presented by Teacher Pao, is that there is this core idea about differentiated learning, of it being meeting them of where they are, meeting our students where they are. Mahina, meet mo sila doon, tapos increase mo yung rigor, or scaffold mo yung task. Okay? Hindi niya kayang i-comprehend yung topic mo based on this particular modality. Change ka ng modality so that he can comprehend, and then expose him to other modalities later on. Okay? It's basically, no, essentially meeting your students where they are, and eventually putting them, no, or increasing their ability to comprehend. Of course, no, yung process of cognition then, okay? Increasing the process of cognition, okay? By the students. So we're not like putting them in one box. Okay? That's actually, no, contrary to what we're trying to do here. We're not going to try to put them in a box. Okay, itong ganito kang klase ka ng learner, we put you here. You're this type of learner, we put you here. Okay? And again, no, Teacher Pao, there's a very important, baka lang na-miss natin. Precisely why we did not use other names for our topic for today, which is differentiated learning. It's because it's the learning process that we'd like to focus on, which is centered on our students. So babalik ka na naman talaga doon sa mga estudyante natin. Know your students, and you'll definitely have more ways, no, to address their needs in the classroom. As for some issues, Teacher Pao, kanina may mga nagre-raise ng issues about doing differentiated learning. We're going to tackle that later on before the open forum on when we talk about the realities of Philippine education in relation to differentiated learning.
Yep.
Yes, ang ganda.
Nakikita mo, binabalikan ko, nandun pa lang ako sa 240, di ba? Kasi
sobrang ganda, Teacher Pao. Balikan mo yung mga sharing ng mga members natin. Sobrang ganda ng mga insights. It's going to give you a lot more, no? And again, two webinars in one. What's happening now and what's happening in the chat, no, are two very massive webinars, no, parallel webinars in a way. Okay. So Teacher Pao, I'll take over and we'll discuss the different learning styles. Okay? So teachers, let's now get into the different learning styles. Now will not just a disclaimer, I will not be able to discuss all of them. Okay, I'll just try to cover as much grounds as I can, no, in terms of like learning styles, so that we have an idea, no, or more of an idea about the differences of our learners. Okay. But before we get to that, again, that's the core of our topic for today, which is differentiated learning. Okay, and that idea of differentiated learning is actually anchored on your idea or on your understanding of the different learning styles. Okay, but okay, as mentioned earlier, okay, we're going to try to understand better and further and deeper the idea of different learning styles, because we might be using it differently. We might be using it in the wrong way. We might be understanding learning styles I don't know, incorrectly. And that's what we hope to correct today, teachers. No? Yung tamang paggamit at tamang pagkakaunawa sa learning styles at paano nga ba ito makakatulong sa atin bilang mga guro in terms of differentiating learning inside our classes, no, regardless if that's face-to-face or in a distance learning setup. Okay. So first of all, okay, let's first talk about now what does science say about relationship between learning styles, instruction, and learning outcomes. And it's based on this research by Newton and Salvin in 2020. They said no that study after study has shown that matching instructional mode to students' supposedly identified learning style does not produce better learning outcomes. Okay, and this is why some people know and would think that learning styles actually a myth. No, yes, it's a myth if you actually pair up no or try to use learning styles to actually just change no, or alter the learning outcomes. Okay, because it's not always going to be just that way, no, that kind of relationship. Okay. So there's really not that very strong relationship that if you attend no, to the learning styles of your students, that you will eventually increase the learning outcomes. So we're going to talk about, so why do I need to know about learning styles? Okay. And of course, in fact, a student's learning style may not even predict the way that they prefer to be taught, okay, or the way they actually choose to study on their own. Okay. So that's one of the things that we'll have to remember. Okay. Because if we intend to use learning styles to impact okay, learning outcomes, then we are actually using learning styles okay, in a wrong way. Right? Because that's not going to actually work, because you're actually stereotyping your students, and you're actually, I saw some comments in the audience earlier, that's actually going to limit your students further. Yes, no. Ironically, that's going to be the case, teachers, no, that if we use their learning styles just that, okay, it's actually going to inhibit them and limit them further in actually learning more and learning better. Okay, so that's one of the things that we'll have to remember. And of course, now what needs to be avoided is already mentioned earlier, okay, that we cannot pigeonhole our students. Okay, you cannot stereotype your students as being such kind of learner. Oh, you're an auditory learner. You're a visual learner. Okay, you are a kinesthetic learner. Okay, so that kind of mentality actually, okay, is a misuse of the learning styles. Okay, because the learning styles is not there, okay, in order to label students. Because again, labeling, okay, will actually inhibit them. Okay, so when you label a particular student to their particular learning style, you're actually boxing them, and boxing them actually limits them in experiencing no or having opportunities to learn some other ways. Okay, so it's not just one. Okay, so they might have some preferences and they might have some dominant learning styles, but it does not mean that they don't learn no, in other ways. Okay, so you cannot, like, for example, remove all those other opportunities from them just because they are more of a visual learner, they are more of an auditory learner. Okay, because again, that's a mistake no, in using your or the idea of learning styles. Okay, so again, we will not pigeonhole. Okay, the idea, no, the basic idea of knowing your students' learning styles, okay, could come in two things. Okay, the first one is that knowing your students' learning styles, okay, you can actually create variations in your instruction. Mentioned by Teacher Pao already earlier. Okay, that by doing so, okay, you're actually trying to meet as many students' needs as possible. Okay. Second, okay, knowing your students' learning styles, okay, learning preferences, okay, levels, okay, of cognition in your class, no, is actually also a way of meeting them where they are. Okay, so these are the primary uses of learning styles. It's not to label your students, because again, doing that, no, labeling your students automatically negates the idea of differentiated learning. Okay? So we want to know what kind of learner you are so that I can differentiate my instruction enough to accommodate as much learners as I can. Mamaya pag-uusapan natin, Sir Franco, paano ba yan? Ang dami naming learners. Okay. Like we have 60, 70 learners in the classroom. Do I differentiate it that way? Mamaya pag-uusapan natin yan when we talk about the realities in Philippine education. Okay? And of course, no, meeting them where they are, no, knowing the learning styles, no, learning preferences, learning levels of your students is also an opportunity to meet your students where they are, so that you can actually guide them slowly, gradually to meet the standards, no, of your subject, okay, of the grade level, etc. Okay, that's our measurement. That's how we use, no, supposedly learning styles. Okay, so let's go into these learning styles now, and let's discuss, no, some of the learning styles so that it could guide you what kind of variations, okay, can I use, no, and can I do in my classes, okay, so that I will be able to meet as many needs as I can. Okay, so that my classes, no, my classroom becomes more and more inclusive. Okay, can we achieve like a 100% inclusivity in the classroom? I I don't think so. Okay, there will always be, you know, some gaps, no, and flaws. Okay, so as educators, what we're trying to do is to try our best. Okay, to accommodate as much, to modify as much in our classroom. Okay, so therefore, okay, that now brings us, okay, that when we talk about differentiated learning, it's all about making the teaching and learning process more dynamic. Okay? Dynamic in such a way that it's actually promotes, no, that very much needed interaction between students to students, teacher to students, okay, and teachers to teachers. No, as mentioned earlier, there's a big need in collaborating with other teachers. Okay, it's not about, no, as mentioned by Teacher Pau, creating a differentiated learning environment, okay, takes the whole community into action. It can't be just one good teacher. It can't be just one excellent teacher. You can't do it all. Because the fact is that if you do it in your subject and it does not exist, no, in other subjects, that's also going to, in a way, affect, no, the flow and effectivity of the learning process. Sometimes, ma-isolate pa yung teacher na yan. Kasi bakit iba yung ginagawa niya? Okay? And you know, no, when you are sort of like going outside of the norm, it's sometimes you get to be also, no, judged in a way. Okay? So that's again the danger, no, if it's not being done at by the entire community. Okay, varied. Okay, differentiated learning also takes, no, as, no, and challenge teachers and educators, okay, to create variations in your teaching and learning process. Okay, so it can't be just always a monotonous kind of approach. Okay, it can't be just like always like lecture. Okay, or let's do this activity. Okay, so there's always that challenge and there's always that need, no, to design our instruction, okay, in such a way that we are intentionally, okay, targeting as many learning styles as possible in a classroom. It's good to know, okay, if we have a learning profile of our students, okay, so we already know, this is the spectrum of my learning styles, okay, this is the spectrum of my levels of cognition in my class, okay, or my levels of comprehension in my class, okay, so that I know how much I should differentiate my instruction. Okay, we're going to talk about differentiating instruction in a little while. And of course, okay, also mentioned by Teacher Pao earlier, engaging. Your students have to be able to engage in your classes, okay? And okay, that's also one of the way reasons why we want to know about learning styles, because if a student, no, have a certain affinity to a learning style, and then you in your lesson, no, you did an activity or like a project or an assessment, okay, or part of your lesson that actually taps on that, you will automatically have that student, no, engaging in your class. He will find, no, or she will find a joy in your classroom. Again, teachers, no, yun yung isa pa nating hinahanap dito. yung makahanap yung mga students natin ng joy in learning. Because having that joy in learning actually engages them more, okay? So later on, even if it's not my learning style or it's not, it's a difficult lesson delivered in a different learning style, I will find that joy in learning and I will be able to do just fine because again, I'm into your lesson now, okay? So that's what we want to do, okay? So I hope that clears it out, okay? When we talk about differentiated learning and different and learning styles, okay? So that's how we meant to use it, okay? Not to label, okay? So again, I'd like to emphasize it again and again. The learning styles are not there in order to label our students, okay? These are data. And I saw kanina a comment no about this differentiated learning and learning styles. Yes, no? Wag nating i-communicate na, visual learner ka pala. Oh, auditory learner ka pala. Let's not do that because your students no will also have problems no and might also stereotype themselves as such, okay? So tayo rin po teachers no, hindi po tayo lahat, for example, I know I'm a visual learner, okay? You are not always a visual learner. Okay? You might be a visual learner in one subject, but not in others. Okay? You might be a auditory learner in one topic, but not in others. Okay? So there's also that differences, no, in terms of your learning styles. You are dominant, no, in different scenarios, circumstances, subjects, and topics. Okay? And that's also gives us now that idea that learning styles also a complex one. Okay? A student, no, a learner is not just one learning style. There might be a dominant learning style, but he's also no, capable of learning across the different learning styles as well. That's why, again, you can't pigeonhole a student. Okay, so let's now go on some of the learning styles no, that we know and we can pay attention to. Okay, again, I will be able to cover everything, especially the multiple intelligences. I hope that we get to also be reminded of that. Okay, so I'm going to go over and some of the existing models. Okay, and some learning styles no that are we are more familiar with or know about. Okay. Okay, so the first one is what we call the VARC model. This a more popular model no, when it comes to talking about differentiated learning, okay, and addressing different learning styles. Okay, so this actually takes into account VARC basically means visual, auditory, okay, or sometimes they call it oral, okay, reading, writing, kinesthetic learning styles. Okay, so okay, when talk about visual, okay, so basically these are your students, okay, who do well when they are when they use symbols, okay, boxes, charts, and colors in their notes. Okay, so this is their best way of receiving information. Okay, so they get to receive information, they get to build more connections, and they get to create no or make sense, okay, of a particular information given if they are arranged in a particular space, okay, using symbols, boxes, charts, okay, and colors, okay. So that is your visual learners. That's why the use of visuals, okay, the use of tables, okay, the use of symbols in your presentations is actually very important. And that actually brings us know that when we do, okay, teachers know, create, for example, or put elements in our presentations, in our worksheets, for example, let's always be intentional. Okay? So think about infographics. Okay? Infographics is actually a very perfect example no, of putting visualizations to certain information. Okay? And when we look at a particular infographic, no, even if you are not a visual learner, it's so easy to understand an infographic. It's because of those intentional details no or visual details or graphics that has been put there. Okay, so that's your visual learner. So again, okay, that should impact no how we do our presentations, how we do our activities no our worksheets, okay, as well in the classroom. Okay, second, auditory or oral no oral learning involves using sound and music. Okay, these are now the students, okay, that are more engaged no when information is delivered to them in sound no or in music. Okay, that's the reason why, okay, there have been like an increase no in terms of use of text to speech applications, okay, and mga text to speech extensions in Chrome, okay, because that also not it's not only because some students are hard of or there's visual impairment, right, or problems with their vision, okay, but sometimes even students no with a very good eyesight, okay, can actually better understand if something is read to them, if they can actually hear it, okay, not necessarily in a music or with all of these tones, okay, but that auditory sensation, okay, allows them to process information better. Okay, that's why the reason like variations, like giving materials in podcasts, okay, or especially your videos, okay, having your videos with narration, okay. Narration is actually if you notice it, okay, if we are like reading a story, okay, yes, you're of course it's still fun of course to read, okay, pero if there's someone reading the story for you and you hear those sounds, okay, of those words, it makes more sense and sometimes it affects you more, okay. So that's your auditory learners, okay. And of course, you have your reading and writing learners. So these are students that are more adept in processing information if they are reading it aloud, okay, repeating it to themselves, okay. So these are your students that actually make sense of information if they keep on reading and repeating information to themselves. No, either reading it aloud or reading it to themselves, okay, as well as writing them, okay. So if you have students, for example, that are I don't know heavy note takers, so this might be your students that actually are learning, okay, I don't know, learning because of writing, okay. And actually I just can't find a particular article about it, but there are like information saying that writing information, okay, because you are also moving, actually increases retention rate, okay, even if you are not a reading and writing learner, okay. Writing your notes on the physical paper, actually writing it, okay, actually increases retention rate, okay. And of course, so more so, okay, for those who are reading and writing learners, okay. And of course, the last one is kinesthetic, or physical learners, okay, involves using their body and sense of touch to learn, okay. So these are students, okay, who prefer doing things, okay, manipulating, okay. So for example, if you're teaching a lesson, okay, if they can do something, okay, while processing that information, that's actually going to help them, okay. This I'm not like entirely sure. And of course, there might be some other relationship, but if you notice some students, for example, that while you are teaching, they keep on like moving something or doing something else. Okay, this might be your kinesthetic learners. Okay, because the movements eventually allows them to translate in a way, also process information that's entering. Okay, so yung movement, for example, or doing something else with their hands, okay, yung mga sort of like mga hindi naman mga fidget tools na, pero those kinds might be an expression of that kinesthetic needs, okay. So if you are also the kind of educator who want to build like a more inclusive classroom, so movements, okay, would actually be something that is also important. It's not only about like dancing. It's not only about like random movements. No, it has actually to be more intentional. Okay, like changing seats. Okay, walking. Okay, or moving from one space to another. These are actually still kinesthetic adjustments or accommodations or modifications in your classroom. As long as again they're doing something, they're moving, that's your a way to address your kinesthetic learners. Okay, so those are your from the VARC model. I'm going to discuss others later, but if you look at this VARC model actually, okay, you would actually see very important overlappings. Okay? And this is what we're telling you earlier, okay, that your learners are not always necessarily always just one kind of learner. Okay, there could be like several combinations all throughout. Okay, so as a learner could possibly, for example, both auditory and kinesthetic, okay, or both auditory and visual. Okay, they could also be, I don't know, a combination of the three or a combination of the six combinations. Okay? And this is the reason why variations in your class is actually very important. Okay, and again, this is also a reminder why we can't. I repeat, we can't pigeonhole our students. Okay, because your students are not just one type of learners. They are, no? They are. No, I actually, no, totoo yan, no, yung walking. I still remember before when because before, no, I live in an age where memorization is actually very, very, prevalent, no, when I was in grade school, okay? And I remember before, that whenever I want to memorize something, I tend to walk a lot. Like I walk around the house, okay, repeating the words, no, the lesson that I need to memorize, okay. And again, no, that's an evidence of being, no, or being a physical or kinesthetic learner, okay. So this again, no, this figure here, okay, tells us that there is that overlapping complex, okay, learning styles that our students might be. Okay, so they are not just one. That's why you can't pigeonhole them. You cannot isolate them. You cannot like group them. Okay, you cannot like what they call stereotype, no, our students just being one. Okay, so again, the idea of learning styles is our entry point so that we can engage them into learning. Okay, our entry point so that we can meet them where they are. Okay, so this is our purpose of knowing your learning styles. Okay, so again, very complex combinations right there. Okay. You also have what we call verbal. Okay. So these are students, no, with who are verbal learners. Okay, reciting information out loud. Okay, not necessarily reading them, but saying it to themselves. Okay. Earlier we encountered the reading learners. Okay, this one are the verbal, no, hearing it from themselves. Okay, or hearing it from someone else. Okay, writing their own notes. Okay, and highlighting key points. Okay, and this might be a very trivial thing, but by simply, for example, highlighting things in your lesson, okay, or highlighting important key concepts in your worksheets would actually help your verbal learners, okay, because they can easily spot, okay, I don't need to digest all the information in this worksheet, or I don't need all this information in the presentation. I need to focus. I can focus on certain key concepts, okay, that allows them to better process the information. Okay, so again, by simply highlighting, no, that's your verbal learners. Okay, you also have your logical learners. Okay, so these are learners that are learning, no, by asking a lot of questions. Okay, why are they asking? So if you encountered, no, students, okay, who kept on asking, and sometimes you would label them, ano ka ba, hindi mo ba talaga naiintindihan, why do you keep on asking questions? You might have, no, or this might be students, okay, that are building connections. That's why they keep on asking questions. Okay, and these are your logical learners. Okay, so logical learners, okay, why do they want to they keep on asking questions, okay, because they wanted to understand the whole process. Okay, they wanted to understand connections, okay, relationships, okay, within your concepts. Okay, so say for example, okay, and this is very important and very prevalent, for example, in the teaching of history. Okay, where in history, for example, you can't just isolate one particular event. Okay, if you encounter, for example, a logical learner, okay, and you're teaching them history, you will always know this is not only for mathematics subject, no. Logical learners also exist, no, and can still thrive in other subjects. No, say for example, in history, they would keep on asking relationships of events, no, to other events, events to people, events to places, events to other things. Okay, and that allows them to make sense, okay, of the entire lesson. Okay, so that is your logical learners. Okay, they are natural thinkers who learn by classifying, categorizing, and thinking abstractly about patterns and relationships. So using of mga diagrams, okay, using those graphic organizers, okay, are perfect for your logical learners, okay, because it allows them to see connections, see the entire picture, okay, that information are not being processed in fragments, okay, because they're trying to process information as a whole. That's your logical learners, okay. And of course, social. Okay, these are your students, okay, who are thriving in collaborative setups. Okay, so these are social learners, prefer to learn in groups, okay, rather than on their own. So they thrive on talking to others, okay, getting ideas of others, getting ideas, okay, of other people, and modifying it in a way, or learning from it, okay, in a way, no, your social learners, okay, learns or understands information better, okay, in a group setup, okay, that having others, no, to learn with, okay, allows them to process information better. Okay. On the contrary, okay, so that's the reason why we always encourage that at one point in your lessons, activities, instruction, that you have collaborative engagements, okay? So that you can also bring in no, your social learners, okay, into the loop of learning in your class, okay? And eventually be exposed no, to other learning modalities or learning styles, okay? And of course, the last one is your solitary learners. Okay, so these are your learners, okay, who tend to be more independent and introspective, okay, spending a lot of their own, enjoying their own company. At one point po, teachers, no, I can say, no, there are times, okay, there are topics, okay, lessons, okay, that I myself, no, can consider myself as a solitary learner, okay. So there are times that I really want to learn about something, okay, on my own, okay. But there are also times, okay, if the topic is, for example, huge and I can't really comprehend it, I tend to prefer, no, a more social setup way for me to be able to learn those concepts, okay. So those teachers, no, are your some of your solid your learning styles that you can take note of, okay, and that should guide you, no, in terms of like variations in your teaching and learning process. Again, for the third time, we are not going to use this in order to label our students. We're going to use this as a way to create variations, okay, create differentiation in the learning and teaching process. Okay? So and aside from that, no, aside from this, knowing the learning styles of your students, okay, of course, educators, okay, that will definitely help you in designing your instruction. But okay, your students, no, also should be, okay, you should also guide them to understand and for them to discover, no, their own learning styles and preferences, their dominant learning styles and preferences, okay, because that would eventually help them become even more independent learners. Okay? Because the truth is, teachers, no, kaya lagi ko sinasabi rin to sa mga teachers, educators natin is that you have to equip your students, no, outside of your classroom as well. Okay? Because you can't always be there. Even if you're the best teacher, no, that actually creates differentiated learning in your classroom, when no, down the road, they will graduate from your class. They will no longer experience no the best classroom that they've had in your care, okay, so they'll have to move on, okay, and what you can teach them, no, is also to understand how do I learn, okay, so that even if I get out from this very great classroom, okay, where my teacher creates differentiated learning, I could still learn at my best. Okay, that's what we call it, metacognition. How do I learn? Okay, so teachers should also take into account the different learning styles, but more so, no, should the students discover how they best learn themselves. Okay, that would help them in terms of like study habits, okay, how they study and how they prepare, okay, or acquire skills and knowledge, no, all throughout their lives as students. Although again, we are lifelong learners, no, we actually never stop learning. Okay, so that should help them, no, even outside of the educational system. Okay. So this is just a sample, no, of how the metacognition cycle, okay, for students. Okay, although this is more like for the older students, okay, but I believe that this could also be applied, no, for younger students. What can be done though, no, for younger students, okay, since we still cannot should still be scaffolded, no, unlike for older students that we can actually engage them on discussions on how they learn, no, in metacognition. Okay, for younger students, maybe it can be as simple as reflection. Okay, what, for example, what did I learn? Okay, what are the things? What are the best things, okay, that I learned today? Okay, or you can also ask them, why did I not learn some of the things? Okay, and why did I learn better? No, some of the concepts, no, in our lesson. Okay, and in that process, no, they get to understand better and better, no, how they learn and how they best learn in the classroom. Okay, so that's your metacognition. Okay, now it has already been mentioned, no, by Teacher Pau earlier. Okay, that the different ways, no, or ways on what can be differentiated. Okay, so alam na natin yung what is differentiated learning. Okay, we know the different learning styles. Okay, and how to we actually use the different learning styles. Okay, I hope we emphasize enough, no, in this session. Okay, now we go to what can be differentiated, and then how do we differentiate. Okay, and I'd like to invite back, no, Teacher Pao, no, into the stream again. Okay, because we'll be sharing, okay, this topic, no, together. Okay, so we'll just wait for her. Okay, but we'll be dividing this into several. Teacher Pao, good afternoon. Welcome back. Okay, so this will be a tandem discussion. Okay, so we'll be discussing the different ways, no. It's already been mentioned by Teacher Pao earlier. Okay, the three areas, no, of what can be modified, what can be differentiated. Okay, and as mentioned by Teacher Pao earlier, we have three. Okay, so basically, I'm interested, okay, to the last one that was mentioned by Teacher Pao, which definitely Teacher Pao will be covering, no, on the learning environment. Yes, indeed, no. Although one of the challenges ni siguro Teacher Pao later for our educators, because the learning environment right now is an open space, no, digital space, okay, as well as at home. Okay, so how do we affect that? No, of course, in the classroom, that can really be done. Okay, arranging your class in a way would actually impact that. No, but what about in a digital space? So we're actually going to talk about that later on. Okay, so content, process, and output. So these are the areas, okay, you can differentiate and you can implement differentiated learning. Okay, so let's talk about first, no, content. Okay, so when we talk about content, teachers, okay, this also basically means the knowledge, understanding, and skills that students need to learn. Okay, so content should remain the same for the most part for all students. Okay, it is the method and access to this content that can be differentiated. So it's not the content. When we talk about Teacher Pao, no, when we talk about differentiated learning, no, in terms of content, we're not going to change the content. So, for example, one, you're teaching them subtraction. The other one, you're teaching them addition. The other one, you're teaching them multiplication. That's not the case, okay? When we talk about differentiated content, okay, we're actually talking about how did you deliver the content and how can students access the content. That's actually what matters, right? So, some of the things, no, some strategies, no, and things, okay, were mentioned by Teacher Pao earlier. So Teacher Pao, okay, care to also comment, no, whenever you need to, for all the things that will be mentioned today, for this one. Okay, so the first one is when we talk about differentiating content, no, is what is being learned. Okay, it was given by Teacher Pao earlier. Okay, so what the primary question when you're talking about content, no, and differentiating content in terms of differentiating learning is that what is being learned. Okay, so the first one that we can try, no, and what we can do is the varied multimodal approach, Teacher Pao. Okay, wherein students access content through a variety of platforms and mediums. Okay, technology definitely can provide it now. Okay, I can still remember Teacher Pao before. Syempre, ang talagang source of information natin before ay yung teacher. So Manila paper, blackboard talagang ating source of information. Unless, okay, rich kid ka at meron kang encyclopedia sa bahay. Okay, tama ba yan? Taas po, teacher, sa mga may kamay dyan. Taas po ang kamay, no, na may mga encyclopedia ng kabataan nila. Yan, mga rich kid po natin yan. Ano? Sila talaga yung may access, no, different access to information. Pero, for the most part, it's the teacher. It's the Manila paper. It's the blackboard that actually is the source. Your textbook as well. Okay? Pero ngayon, Teacher Pao, ang dami na. Okay? Same lesson, you can actually access it in different ways. Okay, I could access the same information using a video, using a podcast, okay, using a text based, using an image, okay, and all other things. Ayan, madami na nagkame meron yan. Nangihiram lang po. Ayan. So, sukatan kasi ng pagiging rich kid yan, Teacher. Ayan, Teacher pa, natatawa ka, may encyclopedia ka before, no? Umamin ka. Ayan, natatawa si Teacher pa. May encyclopedia sila.
Meron kasi naman, yung lolo ko kasi, pero di mo binuklat yung encyclopedia.
At may difference pa yan, ano? Teacher pa, may difference pa ang encyclopedia kung yan ba ay 12 volume or the 24 volume encyclopedia. So may level pa yung richness nyo, no? Time na yan, okay? So for example, Teacher Pao, no, when we're talking about varied multimodal access to content, is for example, okay, you're teaching fractions, okay? So the first access or modality, no, or delivery could be, for example, show a video in YouTube. No? Ang dami ng mga video lessons in YouTube about fractions. Okay? Pwede ka rin, for example, pumunta sa Khan Academy. Ang dami rin ng mga videos about fractions. Okay? Second, okay, pwede mo i-deliver yung fractions, okay, using the Fryer model. Okay? Prior model basically is when you're building up vocabulary, okay, to your students. That's actually very interesting, Teacher Pao, no? An example of a prior model looks like this, okay? Wherein, okay, you just simple, no? A simple table, okay, with 4 quadrants, okay, and then you build the vocabulary of your students, okay. For example, okay, we can change this. For example, this is example fraction, okay, and then you have a definition of fraction, okay, and then the essential characteristics of fraction, what makes a fraction, okay, and then you give examples of a fraction, okay, and then you give non-examples of a fraction, so they can actually eliminate what are not examples of a fraction. Say, for example, you put there a decimal number with decimal points, okay, or although you can still convert that to fraction. If I'm not mistaken, Teacher Pao, no, you're the
Yes.
math teacher right here, okay? But Teacher Pao, no, that's how, of course, no, aside from watching a video, students can build, no, or understand fractions, okay? The vocabulary is related to fractions here, like understanding the denominators, numerators, etc. Okay, that's your prayer model, no? Okay? And of course, you can also do watch and demonstrate. Kanina na mention mo, Teacher Pao, demonstrating, okay? It's actually also an important aspect, no? Pero Teacher Pao, nalinawin ko lang, demonstrating should not only be for the teacher. Okay, the teacher demonstrating the skill and the teacher doing the skill. It should also be demonstration by the students, okay? So there should be also an opportunity for the students to actually demonstrate the skill by themselves. And of course, okay, para lang masaya, eat the cake right after. Okay? So, pero optional na yung eat the cake, no? Pero that should give you more sensation about the learning process, okay? So see, same content, no? And same topic, no, but actually deliver in different ways, okay? Now, you might not like target all the learning styles, okay, but definitely there are more students, okay, that can actually benefit from your lesson, okay? They can choose, no, where they actually understand the lesson better and more, okay? And of course, aside from the Teacher Pao, no, you can also try what they call the student voice and choice, okay? Wherein students can select content based on readiness, interest, learning preferences. This can be accomplished easily by building a variety of content to choose from when giving a task, okay? So ito na yung sinasabi natin na when you give, for example, a question, no, okay, or a particular allow them to explore different content, no, to actually arrive in the same answer, okay? Because there are, for example, no, same skill, one skill, pero can be actually learned or acquired, no, by using different content, okay? Say, for example, we're talking about adaptation in science, okay? Animal adaptations, okay? So you can actually, for example, talk about adaptation on land, adaptation on water, adaptation on air, no, and all different ways or levels of adaptations, okay? And okay, as we're talking about students' access to information, you might want to consider, no, building what we call learning hubs, okay, where students can easily, no, acquire, no, or easily access information about a particular topic. Say, for example, I want to explore animal adaptations, okay, and the teachers, no, curated many materials, no, text, okay, videos, okay, and all different levels of, even if it's, for example, same na lahat text, okay, pero magkakaiba ng sources, okay, or magkakaiba ng discussion points, that could also, no, allow for a more differentiated access to your content, okay? And again, you can use Google Sites, you can use YouTube, you can use Google Drive for building these learning hubs. You can use Wakelet, okay, as well. Ang daming pwedeng paglagyan, okay? Even your Google Classroom or yung mga learning management systems nyo could also become a learning hub, okay? The idea lang is the learning hub is that it's a digital space which students can easily access on their own pacing, and their own choice, okay? For example, same topic, gusto kong ito lang video na itong panoodin ko. Or gusto ko ito lang text na itong babasahin ko. And I get the sense of the lesson just the same way as the others. That's what we call, no, student choice and voice, okay? So, alam mo yung feeling, Teacher Pao, no, pag ganun, na pwede akong pumili. Meron akong
Yes.
independence, di ba?
Correct. I think it's more of when students have the option or the opportunity to choose their content, you can already see the relevance of that. No, we have always been talking about, you evaluate as teachers if what you're teaching is still relevant to your students. And if a student is able to choose this option, no, to talk about, no, if you are giving them opportunities, then it's one way because they feel that they can connect. And you know
Yes.
that when a student is able to connect to your learning, to your teaching, to what you have presented, she or he will be able to remember that even after your class, because you have already touched that emotional aspect, that relevance aspect in his or her life. So it's very important
Correct.
that students are able to relate, no, that in that
Yes.
kind of adaptation or modification, you are able um to bank on the, no, you are able to provide the opportunity for the student to remember that even after.
Yes. Again, no, and this will not work in just one topic. It can actually move forward with other topics and other content in your subject area. And what's good about this teacher Pao is that it's not subject sensitive. No? It can actually be done across different subject areas. Okay. And of course, no, you can also do yung tinatawag nating authentic and relevant learning. Okay? Providing a context, no, to your content actually provides more meaning, Teacher Pao, no, and for our educators. And when the content is presented in authentic to the context of the student and relevant to the students' interests, okay? The students' interests are elevated when the content they're learning consists of authentic experiences, okay? Something that's actually real, okay? I know for a fact, Teacher Pao, no, we've experienced at one point that we asked ourselves, saan ko magagamit to sa totoong buhay? Yan. Isa yan sa mga tanong, no? And
Lalo
yeah,
na sa
that's the
math, 'di ba? Lalo na
yes, no?
sa math.
Yes. Perennial question yan ng mga students natin. Oh, so teach, where do we apply this? No, where do we use this information or knowledge you're teaching them? So by intentionally designing your content right away, no, in a more authentic context, no, a context that's relatable for our students, a context, no, that's being experienced by our students. Okay, they get to process that information better. Okay, because it takes into account, no, their own personal experiences. Okay, say for example, Teacher Pao, no, we're doing a project right now in my school, okay? For grade 7 students, we're talking about geography and human environment interaction. And what we did, no, is to actually ask our students to survey their neighborhood, okay, in relation to COVID-19. So in terms of like context, no, that's the most relevant context right now. So what we did is to ask them to survey their surroundings, okay? What are the available resources around them, okay? Services, for example, that might help them survive a particular lockdown. Say, for example, nag-declare ng 1-year lockdown. Magsusurvive ka ba sa community mo? Will you have that immediate access to hospitals, to pharmacy, to grocery, etc.? Okay? And what we did, of course, we use technology. Okay? So the first, this is a scaffolded project. So the first one that we asked them is to capture, their neighborhood, where their house is. Okay? And then use Google Maps to see the different case services around them. Okay? And then we collect information from websites of the cities, barangays, about the condition of their COVID-19 in their area, how many are infected, how many are vaccinated, etc. So they also have a good sense, no, of their community. And of course, we had the reflection questions, talking about how their environment, no, would eventually impact their survival, as well as how is their existence also affecting their environment. So we also was able to emphasize that human environment mutual relationship. Okay, so
Parang
that's
gusto ko pumasok sa klase ni Sir Franco.
so di ba, yan yung ano, and
Totoo
automatically
that's
the
the
students,
essence. Eh.
hindi na kagad abstract sa mga students yung idea. Yan ang pagdating
Yes.
sa human environment interaction. Alam na kagad na, so yung palang ano ngayon, yung relation ko with my environment, with my community is also an example already of that human environment interaction, no? And how my geography affects me, locations, etc. Lahat yung mga bagay na yung papasok na doon. And again, meron na sila kagad. In a way, teacher pa, no, what's good about is that you already have that preliminary information. Hindi ka nagsimula from scratch. Kasi may context ka na kagad. Alam mo kung ano yung COVID, may information ka about COVID, you've experienced COVID on your own, on a personal level. So you have that like very, very close relationship to that context. Okay, this is what we call, no, a more authentic learning, yung again, putting your tasks, your lessons in a more real life situations for your students. So they get to have that better connection. Okay. Okay, other things that we can try, Teacher Pau, in differentiating content. Okay, so the first ones, we can do the leveled or topical reading. Okay, this is primarily for reading comprehension. Okay, so for example, we can do that our students are reading different books with different levels. Okay, so we can already address them. But again, Teacher Pau, ito yung sinasabi natin, hindi pwedeng, for example, okay, level 1 to 4 tayo sa ating level ng books natin. Okay, so si student A, level 1. Okay, si student B, medyo magaling na, level 2. Si student 3 and 4, level 4 na sila, advanced readers na to. Okay? So, hindi pwedeng, for example, na si student A, lagi na lang siya nasa level 1 kasi nandun siya nagsimula. Okay? So, dapat progressive yon. Okay? So, level 1 siya ngayon. So, teacher, and educators, dapat ang ginagawa natin, we'll have to find a way for him or her to go from level 1 to level 2 books. Okay? And then si student B na nagawa ng level 2, dapat meron tayong way to bring him to level 3 or 4 books naman. Okay? And siguro si level 3 and 4, para hindi sila ma-disengage kasi advanced readers na sila, is to continue doing like maybe a horizontal approach, okay? Wherein you keep on providing them different reading materials, okay? On different topics, okay? That has that kind of reading ability. Okay? So yun yung sabi natin, no? So again, hindi siya pwede nag-stuck dun sa level 1, okay? Kasi kawawa si student, okay? Again, we're not labeling them in order to, we're not like identifying their learning levels, okay, or styles to label them, but just basically to help them, to bring them to meet them where they are and bring them where we want them to be, okay? Audiobooks, kaya ang dami na rin to, Teacher Pau, okay? Alam ko, for example, ang hirap magbasa ng books for many, okay? So having an audiobook, for example, marami rin mga device, I know for a fact, Teacher Pau, that actually provides reading tools. Okay? So just upload the book there and it provides you that read aloud capabilities. Okay? So that should attend to some of our auditory learners as well. Okay? And you can also do simple highlighted text in your presentations, Teacher Pau. That actually, simple yet very powerful way of accommodating our students. Okay? By putting yung highlighted text, they get to process information better, lalo na kapag medyo mahaba yung mga text natin sa presentations natin, although, hindi na dapat. Okay? So dapat strict pa rin tayo. Teacher Pau, if I'm not mistaken, hindi na siya 7x7 rule, no? I encountered the 5x5 rule, okay, from our, okay? Kasi before, if I go back to our college days, it was actually 7x7. If I'm not mistaken, yes. Back in like 2008, 2009. Okay? Pero ngayon, hindi na siya pwedeng 7x7. It should be around 5x5. Okay? So, yung number of words, and number of lines, okay, in your presentation, for example. But even so, kailangan pa rin nating pwede pa rin tayong mag-accommodate by highlighting important concepts, okay? Turning them to bold, okay? Underlining them, italicizing them, etc. Creating this variations in the text, to highlight a particular aspect of our information. Okay? Varied topics for research. Okay? So pwede rin tayo magbigay, for example, kung ang topic naman natin ay research, okay? So you might want to actually open it up, and mas madami silang options, okay? And to give them more choice and voice, in delivering a particular research. Okay? Either way, it will go the same process, on submitting a topic outline, going through the rigor of research, citing, etc. Same skills, okay? But it's something that actually meets what they want to research about, what they want to know about. Okay, so when we're doing research, especially for our senior high school students or older students, okay, independent study options. Okay, so especially right now, Teacher Pau, when we are designing asynchronous activities, okay. So we might actually include in our asynchronous activities, options for our students, okay, to actually study on their own, okay, or discover particular topics, okay, on their own, okay. But it again, as we reminded earlier, it should not be just a simple random curated materials, okay. So there should be like an intentional, okay, curation of these materials where the students can actually move from one step to another. Because when we say about study, independent study options, means that they can actually follow on their own without asking you. like without sending you an email or giving you a personal message, no, that independent study that will inhibit the independence in the study options. Okay? So make sure that the steps, okay, the materials are there, okay, cohesively working together. Okay, that's what we call independent study options are for. Okay, interest centers. Okay, so you might want to also set up that, no, although okay, this can be done, no, digitally, okay, but this could act this is primarily done also in the face-to-face setup, okay, where we set up, no, areas where students can explore topics that they want to explore. Okay, um, not necessarily as close to it, okay, but maybe the jigsaw activity can come close to an idea of interest centers, okay, where your students know go to different sources of information, okay, and then okay, regroup, okay, in order to share all the things that they have gathered so far. Okay, so that's our interest centers. Okay, and ang gusto lang natin dito is that our students, okay, have many options of what content they want to access, how they want to access it, okay, and yung pacing of access as well. Okay, and again, in a digital space, mas marami pa tayong option dito. A simple website, a simple wakelet, okay, can actually do all of this right away. Okay. And of course, yun nga sabi natin kanina, demonstration is also one of the best ways to accommodate your students. Okay? Actually, it's not, again, no, as I mentioned earlier, it should not be just the teacher demonstrating the skill or information. Okay? It should also be the students being given an option to demonstrate it themselves. Okay? So that they get to also do the learning, do the subject as they say it, okay, Teacher Pao, as well as maybe do it, no, or discover ways to do it on their own. Okay, hindi lang siya on a example on a linear, okay, way of doing things. Okay, you might discover as well, no, different ways of approaching a particular problem or a particular situation. Okay. And ito na mention ng Teacher Pao kanina. Teacher Pao, you mentioned this earlier, no? Yung tinatawag natin na yung areas of what can be accommodated as well. Okay? So, ano naman yung mga levels natin, no? Or aspects na pwede nating tingnan, okay, pagdating sa pagdi-differentiate. Okay? So, for example, so meron tayong tatlong areas yan, yung readiness, okay, interest, and learning profile. Okay? And ito, meron kang mga simple studies that you can actually do, no? So, the first one is yung tinatawag nating tiered content. Okay? Big sabihin lang ng tiered content is that you don't like put all the contents in one blow. Like, here's our lesson, okay? And you dump it all to them, okay? When you say tiered content, you're actually, in a way, compartmentalizing your lesson in a meaningful way, okay? That your students can digest the lessons, okay, or the topics, no, in chunks, okay? Not in one big boulder of information, okay? And of course, you can also do providing a variety of materials, okay? So again, na-mention natin ito kanina, video, podcast, audio, images, okay? Text, okay, and all other kinds of materials. Okay, those kinds of variations, okay, should be able to address, no, whether readiness, interest, or the learning profiles. Okay, presentation styles, okay, how we present information. Okay, that also goes to us teachers, no, educators, when we are doing a lecture. Okay, how we present the information. Okay, we're going to have something like that in September, Teacher Pao, no, public speaking and presenting information. Okay. And of course, scaffolding. This is one of the best one of the best strategy that I really love, Teacher Pao, is scaffolding. Okay, because what scaffolding does, no, teachers, that it breaks, no, tasks, okay, into smaller doable tasks. Okay, so say for example, no, Teacher Pao, yung sinabi namin kanina na yung project namin about neighborhood survey. Okay, if just for example I tell you, do a neighborhood survey, and you're a grade 7 student, you will never know where to start, what to gather, and what to do. Okay? So what happens now, when you implement, no, or when you employ scaffolding, is that you break that big task, no, neighborhood survey, into smaller tasks. Okay? So say for example, we have 3 smaller tasks there. Okay? The first one, okay, which we did, no, in 1 week, is to identify the 10 important places around them using Google Maps. That's our step number 1. Okay? Then we move on to step number 2, and week number 2. We gathered information about their neighborhood, about COVID-19. And then step number 3, okay, is to do the reflection questions, okay, making sense of the information they have collected. So see, the one big task, okay, was not given to them in one go. Instead, it was given in smaller, doable tasks, okay? Eventually leading to that big final task that they have. Yan, okay? So yan yung tatawag nating scaffolding. And we do that every time, especially for younger kids. Scaffolding is really worse. Pero actually, Teacher Pao, kahit sa college, ginagawa ko yan. I'm teaching in Ateneo, okay? And one of my requirements in Ateneo is always, baka may mga Ateneo students ako dito ma-discover na nila. May primary requirement which accounts for 40% to the college students I'm teaching in Ateneo is a research paper, okay? But di ba before, okay, when we are doing research, for example, I know you've experienced this, Teacher Pao, a professor asking you, do a research, okay, and submit to me at the end of the semester. That's not scaffolding. Okay? Di ba? Pero I know I've encountered a professor like that before, no? So what I do now and in Ateneo instead is that I break the research process into several steps. Okay? So the first step is always title, topic approval. Okay? So they submit a topic, title for approval for me. Then I comment. Okay? Second one is to gather preliminary resources. Okay? So preliminary bibliography. Okay? So that I could check where they would get the information. Okay? And then, sorry pala, topic outline muna pala. And then, preliminary bibliography. And then they started, the fourth step now is to start gathering information and putting that into their paper. Okay, so that one big research paper is divided into several steps. Okay, and pinakamaganda ng Teacher Pao, in each scaffolded task, you get to have a feedback. Sa topic pa lang, nakapag-feedback ka na. Kasi before, sa dulo ka magsasubmit ng research paper, bago pa makapag-comment yung professor mo, mali pala yung title, ay nagawa mo na yung research mo. Ang sakit. Ang sakit-sakit nun. Okay? Pero ngayon, alam na kagad ni student, reject na yung... Yes, di ba? Alam na kagad ni student, reject yung topic mo, change mo na bago ka pa mahirapan at bago ka pa mapariwaraan sa subject natin. Okay? So that's what we call scaffolding. And again, I use that for my grade 7 students. I use that for my college students. It works every time. Okay? And of course, learning contracts can also be used. Okay? Learning contracts, Teacher Pao, is about entering into a contract with your students. Pwede rin siyang class contract actually. But this can actually be individualized to students that are really having a hard time in your class. Okay? So learning contract specifies certain achievable milestones for the students, so you can actually track the progress of the student. Okay? And of course, it also allows you more commitment, okay? For students, at mas personalized din siya in a way because you'll be able to target a particular student's preferences, learning styles. Yun yung pumapasok yung talagang individualization natin, okay? And of course, yung tatawag nating compacting, sometimes we have to also sort of like reduce the amount of content that we have for our subject areas or contents. Okay? At yun yung ginawa natin, for example, for the MELC. Okay? The MELC is actually an example of compacting, where you compacted certain contents for subject areas to be able to meet the demands of the pandemic. Okay? Yun. Okay, so that's Teacher Pao, some of the strategies that we can try. Okay, so now we're gonna go to our second aspect of differentiation, which is on process. How do we differentiate processes? Okay, for our students. Okay, good luck, Teacher Pao.
Okay. So, dyan ka lang din, Sir Franco. So, we will be able to exchange ideas, no? But at any given point, pag ako nawala, kasi sobrang lakas po ng ulan currently, sabi, nag-flicker na yung ilaw, namatay yung electric fan ko. So, yan. So, yeah, let me just continue. All right. So, as mentioned by Sir Franco, so we will now look into how we deliver our instruction. So, again, let me share my screen with you. Yep. Okay. All right. There. Okay. So, on process and delivery of instruction. So, okay, so these are the things. So, usually, when we do our instruction, talagang class discussion. Basic yon. Siyempre, magtuturo ka di ba? There are times when you use direct instruction, but I hope you're not doing it all the time. So, how do we deliver our lessons? Okay, so what are the things that we can do to differentiate in class discussion? Okay, so number one, no na po sa atin ang direct instruction that you will catch yourself speaking for maybe 15 minutes without engaging your audience. Kung naririnig niyo si Sir Franco kanina, 'di ba? Um he's explaining but at the same time catching my attention, no, hindi siya dire-diretso na nagdi-discuss ng topic niya, no, and elicits responses from audience as well, as seen in your active participation in the chat box. Okay, so in class discussion, for us to be able to differentiate properly, as we have been stressing, we can stress enough that this should be intentional. And to be intentional means you have to plan for it. No, for a differentiated instruction to work, it must be planned. So even our questions should be planned in advance. Okay, of course there might be questions, no, that might pop up during the discussion, but okay, the important thing here is as teachers, we already have that preview of what are the possible questions we can ask the students to elicit responses from them. The second one is to redirect student questions. So when they ask questions, for example, we've seen examples we've seen questions in the chat box already. You also answer that in terms of a question. All right, you just don't answer back the student. No, we process how they also ask questions, and then we ask students to comment on another response. That is also differentiating learning because, again, we are not, gone are the days that teachers have the monopoly of information. So we have to also ask if there are any comments from other students. Even for example, you've asked a question, one student responded, and then you will process. Would you have any comments on the response of your classmate? But this can only work if you have established a safe learning environment to your students where she or he feels that it's safe for me to answer a question and it's safe for me to comment on someone because that person will take it as constructive, no, and they will only see that if the teacher has also demonstrated that it's okay to ask questions, no? And then, in our case right now, we utilize breakout room, but we have to make sure that we give clear instructions. Okay, that's another one form of differentiating our class discussions. Just recently, I had in my class an investigation. So I've done different investigations, but the most recent one, what I did was to give them instructions first, and then them out to breakout rooms, investigate for themselves first, and then when they come back, they share. Okay, so in that instance, they already did the work, they have expressed themselves, so you know that there is already something. No, instead of doing a hot call where maybe no one will answer you because they're afraid, no, or they don't know the answer. So peer to peer muna, then balik sa main room, okay, or sa main session, and then choose open-ended questions because in this type of questions that you've designed, it will elicit more ideas. Okay, hindi siya yung pag sinabing what's the answer tapos one or two phrases lang yung sagot, or yung tipong objective tapos binary good mo yung bata. Okay? What questions do we expect teachers to ask? We expect teachers to ask questions that will require students to think critically, creatively, answer how questions, why questions, not just simple what, who, when, where. Okay? Maybe you can ask the relevance of these things. No? All right, that is for class discussion. And then also, we have to challenge their thinking. Baka naman masyadong madali na rin yung questions natin. Then, hindi mo na rin sila ma-up to the next level as what Sir Franco has mentioned. 'Di ba? Kasi alam mo, hanggang dito lang. 'Di ba? So, you really have to challenge their thinking. Apply appropriate wait time. Pag nag-ask questions, after 5 seconds, walang sumagot, pero ang hirap pala ng question mo na tipong kahit ikaw, sasagutin mo siya, pero kailangan mo ng mga 10-second wait time. unfair yun para sa mga bata. So, again, because you've planned it, you know, you have already estimated the number of minutes. Just like in making assessments. Sa math, no, what I've been practicing is that I should be able to answer the test 1/3 of the time that the student is required to answer the test. So if I'm giving a 1 hour test, I should be able to answer it in 20 minutes. If not, I have to adjust my test, not adjust the time of the students. I have to adjust my test. No? So it also works for class discussions. No? So apply appropriate wait time. Kung hindi pala talaga kaya ng mga bata mag-expand, no? I'm just thinking math kasi that's my practice. But even in languages or in essays, no, apply appropriate wait time so that you can elicit good responses from the students. Next is to listen fully to your students' questions and responses. No, when you ask questions, you listen to the response of the student intently. Hindi yung para lang makapagtanong. Okay? So, we want to make sure that you can also get something from the student. Just as what we are actually getting from you when you do chat, we look at that one by one. Binalikan ko after my presentation, binalikan ko lahat ng mga questions, no? And your insights as well. And then, provide examples of how students might answer difficult questions. So kung kunwari in your discussion medyo humirap, naging difficult ng konti, diyan papasok yung sinasabi ni Sir Franco ng scaffolding. No, when you do your discussions with the students. Right? Next, point out what is helpful or interesting about student contributions. So, for example, may na-present siya, oh, that's a novel idea. That's another way to do it. There are many times I catch myself as a math teacher. It's that easy. That's how she thinks. No? I would just like to share that in my context of teaching for about 12 years already. Before I was used, I think, no, you would agree that in mathematics, when you answer, you have to do step 1, step 2, step 3. If you're not doing that, then you don't get the correct answer. If you do trial and error, that's wrong. Okay? But now, because teaching and learning is actually evolving. If you are really if you're looking into conceptual understanding, you know that when a student does trial and error for her work, it's not trial and error per se. It's trial and error because she knows she's applying some concept that she's learned. No, she got it from you, no, or she got it from the discussion. The concept is there. Yung nga lang, ang method niya is trial and error. If you didn't specify any method, then that trial and error solution of that student merits credits. No, because she has shown conceptual understanding already. Okay? So, pareho lang yan, discussion or in assessments. Okay.
Teacher Pao.
Yes.
Teacher Pao, lang, no?
Go ahead.
Yun, reminder sa mga teachers natin, lalo pag nagbibigay po tayo ng mga feedback sa mga estudyante natin, how important it is. Kasi it makes sense of the failure. Kasi it can't be just like, for example, yung sasabi na, for example, okay lang magkamali, okay lang bumagsak, ang mahalaga natututo tayo. Pero kung wala kasing maayos na feedback dun sa assessment, hindi rin talaga natuto yung mga estudyante, bumagsak lang po talaga sila. So, by providing, for example, di ba, tama Teacher Pao, na for example,
Yes,
if I
yes.
see a 70 or a 65 on my paper, and there are really no like a good quality feedback on my paper, I also did not learn from my 65. Okay, so while it's always we always have to take it positively, those kinds of failures, we'll have to make sure that we also intently make use of them as a data to help our students.
Agree, definitely, no? So that's how, because I definitely agree with what Sir Franco has mentioned. No? Feedbacking is very important, and it happens both in assessments and even during discussion. No, it is important that maitama natin yung kung ano man, yung kung kunwari misconception or kung kulang man yung sagot ng bata, pero in a polite way, para okay lang kay student na mag-raise siya ng question, pero mag-gets niya pa rin kung bakit siya nagkamali. No? Pero hindi mo siya napahiya. No? Kasi nakuha mo, paano niya naintindihan, pwedeng binalikan mo kung ano yung naging misconception niya, naging clear sa kanya, naging clear pati sa classmates nila. So, that again, that can only happen if you are really employing an open and safe environment inside your classroom. Okay. And then put the question in a place where it is visible to students while discussing. No? Kasi minsan pag hindi nila nakikita, di nila maalala, ano nga ulit yung sinasabi ni teacher? No? So maganda na meron. So thank you to Manila Paper na buhay tayo dati. Di ba naalala nyo kahit yung mga simpleng question na ganun or lalagay mo sa kartolina, ito yung question, tapos yung didikit mo. Yan. So, yan. Diba? Agree ka ba, Sir Franco?
Yes. Teacher Pao, dito papasok yung pinag-usapan ni kanina, yung learning hubs. Okay? Parang,
Yes.
kasi the learning hubs builds that continuity outside of your asynchronous and your synchronous sessions. Okay? Na kahit hindi ka nakasynchronous, your students are continuously engaging with your content. Kasi pwede silang bumalik doon, puntahan ko yung website ni teacher. May question sa ganito. Or punta ko yung classroom namin, may question kami ganito. Something like that. So continuously engaging your students in these learning hubs.
Ayan, kanina nga may nakita na nga ako. Google Classroom is the best learning hub. Meron din ako nakita, Edpuzzle is my learning hub. Meron din, Wakelet pala. Wakelet. I've seen that. If you were with us last Thursday, Sir Chad and Ma'am Jinky has shared with us, areas where we can also, engage. All right. And then, praise students for their responses. Only, again, if their responses, yung questions na binigay mo talaga, demonstrates high level of understanding. Hindi rote memorization. Hindi nag-yes lang. Okay, very good. Diba? Papa-explain mo, syempre, bakit siya naging true? Bakit siya naging false? No, because that's where you up the level. You raise the expectation, you raise the level of learning, you raise the rigor of learning. Yan. And then, do not answer your own questions. Rather, ask leading questions. Diba? Tanong mo, sagot mo. Pag ginawa mo na yun, ibig sabihin, parang wait lang. Diba? Pag may hindi nagsulat, pag may hindi nagsagot, sige, ako na lang sasagot. Sayang oras eh. Diba? But, mas masasayang yung oras natin if nagtanong ka, sinagot mo, hindi sila natutuwa, ulitin mo ulit. Diba? Rather than you ask them the questions and then pag hindi pa rin nakukuha, dun mo sa scaffold, paano ba nila makukuha? Where? You try to locate where they are. No? So again, knowing your students is key. Yan. Have students even prepare questions. I've seen in previous webinars na meron din silang techniques that they ask the students, to prepare their own questions. Meron silang test bank, question bank, sila mismo. Tapos sila mismo din sasagot. Diba? And then, there. Okay, so that's one. In-class discussion. Okay? So, kasi majority naman tayo, alam natin, we really spend time, developing concepts. But, we have to limit ourselves doing direct instruction. Na talagang itinuro mo na lang talaga lahat. No, it should turn into a discussion. Okay, not just a simple lecture. Right? So I'll move on, to the next one in terms of delivery pa rin. How do we deliver our lesson? So, of course, very gasgas na nga to sa mga teachers, collaborative learning. Okay. So, ano yung important naman in collaborative learning? Kanina on class discussions, it has been stressed that you have to make sure that you have an open and safe environment for students to express their thoughts. For collaborative learning this time, we do recognize that students have their own preferences. Meron dyan individual, yun na-mention na nga ni Sir Franco kanina. Meron works well with individuals, individually. Meron naman works with other individuals, so mga extroverts. Okay, but hindi natin sila pwedeng i-limit na mas nag-work akong mag-isa ako. We always have to remember that in the real world, in the real setting, you have to work with people. Just as teachers, di ba? May mga teachers na introvert talaga ako, hindi talaga ako, shy talaga ako. Pero you have to work with your colleagues. Hindi po pwedeng hindi. Alright? So, the school, okay, their education will give them opportunities for this. Okay? So, paano ba nag-work si collaborative learning? Okay. Number one, so let's just have some key some samples no that we can use. Numbered heads together. Okay, where this is just a sample no. You assign specific roles to the students. No, para may direction sila. It's providing them directions. Many times in this webinar, you've heard that you always have to give instructions to the students very clearly. So in this case, for example, Speed Captain ensures that the team works fast to come up with as much ideas as possible. No, if you're given 15 minutes in your breakout room, then the Speed Captain is the one monitoring that. Then Silly Sultan encourages silly ideas. Let's have crazy idea. Let's think of something funny. Let's think of something innovative. Okay? Parang siya yung out of the box. When everyone is thinking about, the conventions, okay, this one, the Silly Sultan will just think outside the box. Okay? And then support sergeant. Make sure all ideas are encouraged with no evaluation. Okay? Kasi dito talaga madalas in group works no. Kaya nagkakaroon din yung conflicts yung mga bata na hindi siya na lang yung magaling teacher eh. 'Di ba? Paano mo susolusyonan 'yon, 'di ba? Maglagay ka ng parang anong tawag sa kanya, middleman, mediator, no? Na will be able to balance what was being shared. No, in that sense, yung student who was assigned as a support sergeant can already develop skill on thinking whether this idea is good, anong maganda, anong pwedeng i-improve and so on, no? And then synergy guru encourages the team to build on each other's ideas. Okay, maganda yung idea niya. And then ganyan. So pagka merong ganito, pagka merong may control, no? Hindi siya iko-control ng isang tao tapos siya lang yung papakinggan, siya lang yung magaling. Okay? And then we end up having complaints from parents saying that this student does not provide opportunities for her classmates or his classmates to share ideas, or ito namang student na to walang ginawa, nakinig lang, hindi man lang nagtrabaho. 'Di ba? Ang dami nating freeloaders, no? Gusto nating iwasan. So by giving them specific tasks, we are actually differentiating already. Kasi binibigyan mo na sila ng iba-ibang klaseng skills, I would say soft skills, social skills, that they can develop together while learning content, no? While learning different subject skills that you have. Okay, another, ito I'm sure, ginagawa nyo na to. Sure na tayo ginagawa nyo na to. Ang importante ulit, nasa plano na natin, intentional na siya kasi gusto mong ma-differentiate. Number one, marker boards. Ngayon, kung online pa tayo, kung online yung modality natin, we can use marker boards. We can use, yung marker boards? So, meron lang silang boards dyan. Boards up. What are your responses? No? Nung una sa akin, parang konti lang nagtataas. Sabi ko, taas nyo para makita ko kung ano yung performance ninyo. No? Hindi, kasi nga, we really want to promote that safe environment. And then, gallery walk. No? Gallery walk, students get to see works of different students. And then, we have role-playing. Yan, sure, I'm sure namimiss nyo na yung face-to-face, no? These things, pagka na-practice naman natin siya, we can still do role-playing. No? I'm sure teachers will be able to find ways how to modify this in a virtual setting. And then we have jigsaw strategy. Na-mention to ni Sir Franco kanina. Pero yung version ko ng jigsaw strategy is that, for example, I have 5 problems. And then these 5 problems, they are given to, for example, a set of 4 students. So yung 4 students na yan, say, group 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, may tig for 4 students yan, si A, B, C, D. Okay, si A, B, C, D. Yung 5 problems na yan, kinalat ko sa kanila. So si group 1, nag-work siya sa first problem. Okay? Pwede kasi itong na-assign beforehand. Mas maganda siyang na-assign beforehand. Tapos dinidiscuss na nila. Discuss na nila kung paano. Tapos, pagdating ng after a certain time, maybe 10 minutes or 5 to 10 minutes, natapos na nilang i-discuss. I-reshuffle ko sila in a sense na lahat ng A in each of the groups will form a new group. And that group, lahat ng A's dyan, syempre naging part sila ng isang previous group. They are the ones who's gonna explain the concept or the problem. So lahat ngayon sila naging involved dun sa learning process. Nakinig tayo sa discussion, po pwedeng ganun. Kaya hindi pwedeng tumunga ng isang bata kasi kawawa yung magiging group niya. Walang magdi-discuss ng problem na yun. So it's that's one kind of strategy. Multiple breakout rooms ang peg nito pag virtual. Yan. So you've been doing team pair solo, pair share, pairs check, think pair share, rally robin, round robin, pair square. Yung rally, ang difference lang ng rally at saka round, rally 2, round 4. Pag sinabing robin, discuss. Pag sinabing table, sulat. Okay? So meron tayong rally table or rally round table. Okay? So that is for them to exchange ideas. Okay? Yung team pair solo actually, maganda siya kapag multi-level or you want the student to develop skills on their own, talaga like for example math. No, isang problem. Lahat muna kayo sasagot. Tapos bibreak mo sila. O sige, 2 na lang kayo sasagot or 3 lang kayong sasagot. O sa pangatlong problem, mag-isa ka na lang sasagot. Kasi na-expose ka na sa team, na-expose ka na sa group, tapos individual ka nang mag-work. So that's one form of scaffolding also. And then, so adapting to the virtual environment, we have asynchronous discussion through the different collaborative boards. So, Padlet, Jamboard, kung nakita nyo si Teacher Yu dyan, shout out to si Teacher Yu dyan, no? And OneNote, of course. Yan. So, different boards where students can actually share. So, pwedeng synchronous yung boards, no? Habang nagdi-discuss ka, naglalagay sila sa Padlet. Diba? Or pwede namang mag-iwan ka ng question on say Google Classroom, meron ka doon. Kaya nga may stream ka doon, 'di ba? May stream ka doon tapos pwede silang nag-i-input. O meron kang requirement na dapat nakapag-raise ka ng new idea, nakapag-comment ka sa comment ng 2 classmate. So, isipin mo na lang kung gaano karami, no, yung makikita mong engagement or interactions from the students. So, makikita mo din doon sinong students yung hindi nagkakaroon ng oras. At bakit? Siyempre, aalamin naman din natin kung bakit hindi nagagawa. Hindi ba naiintindihan? Nahihirapan ba? May problema ba sa connection? And so on. Kasi nga, hindi mo na control dahil wala na, hindi mo na siya nakikita. Diba? So, that is for asynchronous discussion. So, yung sinasabi ko rin kanina, structured group work. Meron kang either specific assignments for students or specific tasks, no, na kailangang gawin, no, for each of the groups. Yeah. So, Sir Franco, is there anything that you'd like to add for saglit ha, isa-stop share ko muna to. Yan, wait lang.
May nagtanong lang kanina, Teacher Pao, no? And
Yes.
sinasagot ko naman na sa chat. Pero asking about sa grouping, pag grouping by research talaga, teachers, no, it's really 3 to 4, not beyond 4. Kasi it's hard to create that group dynamics kapag 5 na. Sometimes meron ka na diyang mga nagso-social loafing or yung tatawagan nating preloading, okay?
Yes.
Pagdating naman sa groupings, na may tanong kanina about do the teacher group the students or do the students group themselves, okay? It actually depends on your activities, teachers, okay? Kapag ang activities nyo ay mga short in-class activities, it can be done, no, as randomized groupings or student-directed groupings, no, because these are small, short-term groupings. Pero pag ang pinag-uusapan natin, teachers, mga long-term projects like a whole term project, like a whole quarter, then you'll have to intervene. Okay, when you say intervene, you'll actually have to use data to be able to group them properly kasi you don't want to set them up for failure. Okay? Kasi kapag hindi naging okay yung dynamics, no, they'll suffer definitely for the whole quarter. Yung in-class kasi, kahit hindi nila gusto yung ka-groupmate nila kasi in-class lang yun pagkatapos ng 40 minutes, tapos na yun eh. Okay? I get to experience pero hindi ako mag-suffer that much. No? Pero kapag long term, you really have to intervene.
Yeah, so
we go now to
yan, add ko lang, no, when it comes to groupings, dun magpapasok yung role ng you can seek the help of guidance counselors also, no, if and when conflicts arise, no, doon sa mga ganyang grouping na pangmahabaan, no, but of course we try to work on it first before, you know, just doing the ultimate na paghiwa-hiwalay na lang sila. Hindi talaga, no? Kasi ang gusto natin, the student will be able to resolve conflicts themselves.
correct.
No? Wag lang sana syempre yung nagkakasakitan na and all. We don't want that. So as much as possible, kung binibigyan natin sila ng part by part, gaya ng practice ni Sir Franco on research, doon pa lang makikita mo na ano na ba nangyayari dito. Hindi yung aabot sa dulo, teacher, wala po talaga siyang ginawa. Nag-part by part ka na eh. Dapat nalaman mo na from there. So, meaning monitoring and progress in those long-term activities are also key, no, for the group to really work.
Pero, Teacher Pao, dyan na rin pumapasok actually yung tinatawag nating shorter in-class collaborative learning. Kasi, Teacher Pao, no, si collaborative learning ay isa skill. Hindi siya pwedeng in-expect mo kagad, magpapa-collaborative ako, in-expect yung mga students ko, alam na nila yung gagawin or how they can work with others. Precisely teachers that we're trying to give them these opportunities to teach them. So you don't expect, so you don't throw them there in a collaborative setup, okay? Expecting everything will go well. Kaya napakahalaga, Teacher Pao, kapag gagawa tayo ng mga collaborative learning setups, nagsa-start talaga tayo sa shorter in-class activities. Sort of like a warm-up, like you're going to put them there, learn the dynamics, learn how to talk to others, learn how to express themselves, get comfortable in a small group settings, okay? And then eventually you throw them in a more long-term setup. Okay, that's how you do it, no? Kaya talagang hindi siya pwedeng in-expect mo kagad, dapat alam niyo nang marunong kayong makipag-collaborate sa iba. Hindi po. So that's a skill that we'll have to also teach our students. Okay? Teacher Pao, gusto ko lang idagdag to. This is also a strategy that they might want to try in terms of differentiating process. This is called student-directed, teacher-guided differentiation. Wherein the learning process occurs based on the student's choice. Okay? So it actually ensures yung pacing ng students. Okay? And also how they would like to tackle on a particular task. Although medyo mahirap lang to ngayon i-implement sa curriculum natin because having our curriculum as very rigid, medyo mahirap mag-provide ng student-directed kasi yung rigidity ng ating curriculum is inhibiting our teachers. Kanina umiiyak na yung mga teachers natin sa chat kanina sa comment na sabi nila ang ganda ng topic, ang ganda ng differentiated learning pero we are swamped with papers, we're swamped with documents at mamaya pag-uusapan po natin yan. At totoo yan teachers, no? That's valid feelings. Okay? Wala po kaming nire-reject dyan sa mga pakiramdam na yan. Talagang totoo po yan. No? Kahit kami rin po, Teacher Pao, no? We also experience that na sometimes kahit gusto naming mag-differentiate ng learning, pero ang daming meetings and documents na kailangan ipasa, sometimes napupunta na lang kami sa like traditional lecture and delivery. That also happens, okay? That happens to all of us. You're not alone, teachers, okay? And that's not like you're not a bad teacher for doing that or not being able to differentiate the learning process, okay? Ito lang, Teacher Pao, itong strategy na ito, maganda kasi dito is that it takes into account yung tinatawag nilang zone of proximal development wherein Vygotsky.
Yes.
It allows your students to be taken out of their comfort zone, okay? As well as siguro yung comfort zone nila yun din yung mga ibang learning styles nila tsaka preferences nila, no? And then you're introducing them slowly to other things, to other modalities, okay? So you could stretch their learning processes and cognition as well, okay? So that's also a study that they can try, okay? So Teacher Pao, maybe we could proceed now to our last part for today, which is before we, I know we're overtime teachers, no? Pasensya na po kayo kung nag-overtime tayo. But I hope that you really appreciate our discussion so far, okay?
Sige.
But
Sir
we'll
Franco, yung ano lang, yung last natin is on assessments. I'll just share about 3 slides,
go
three to
ahead,
four
Teacher Pam.
slides on that. Okay, so, ayan, daanan natin ang pinaka mabilis. Alright, for a while. Okay. So, let me just share that on product and on assessments, no? So, when we talk about assessments, okay, we talk about 3 things: pre-testing, formative testing, post-testing. Yung pre-testing, yan na po yung, dyan pumapasok yung mga diagnostic tests. Okay, so kanina sinasabi, you have to know your students, you have to know your students. And this is one thing. Even psychological tests can be used. No, these are assessments to check on where the students are at. So please, so basically, kung meron kayong access or mahanapan nyo ng access, pinakamaganda po yun because you cannot differentiate without knowing your students. Okay? So in terms of formative assessments, there are actually many ways to differentiate. You can use both formal and informal assessments, but you have to vary. Hindi pwedeng puro pen and paper test. Hindi naman pwedeng puro reflection paper lang. So iiba-ibahin natin. No, depending on also the skill, no, of the targeted skill, no, in your subject. So effective assessment set up the students for success. Yung sinasabi natin na baka naman yung access skill pa yung nagka-problema, hindi niya ma-present yung target skill niya. And then the format may drive depth of learning, no? So if you, kung gusto mo ng ano lang talaga yung basics, learning, remembering the concepts and so on, okay lang mag-objective. Pero kung gusto mo to dive deeper than that, you go for essays. You go for short responses, na short open-ended responses. And then, it will have to require deeper thinking and application of knowledge. No? And then, demonstrate steps towards mastery. No, doon mo makikita yung pagkakaiba-iba. Yung math, hindi lang numbers ang sinasagot. Pwede siyang sumagot ng tanong na why. Pwede siyang sumagot ng tanong na to what extent. No? So, may leveling kang pinapasok. Alright? So how do we do that? No, I'm sure you've been doing your portfolios. We've seen portfolios before. You have to present the rubrics to students, and it has to be very clear and explained to them before they do any assessment. Then when they do presentations, clear guidelines is also done. No, hindi po pwedeng gumawa ng PowerPoint presentation, nilagay lahat doon binasa. That's not even a presentation. Okay, so yung mga lumang reporting natin, hindi po pwedeng kung ano lang nakasulat yun na yung binasa. Hindi pwede. Alright? And then, the different projects that we have, no? So, medyo nauuso na nga yung project-based learning. Okay? And to be able for you to successfully do project-based learning, it has to be very clear in terms of your goals. Okay? And then, essays. Pwedeng mag-essay sa math, pwedeng mag-essay sa psych, pwedeng mag-essay sa science, no? Explaining. No? Mahirap mag-check, yes. But if we are really after learning, pwede naman nating i-chunk, no, yung pagbibigay ng essay or short response questions natin, no. And then experiments, we can also do that. In between quick checks for your assessments, and then exhibitions. No, exhibitions, exhibit the works of the students. Yung sinasabi din natin, if you have exemplars, again, for data privacy lang siguro, seek the approval also of the minor if you are going to present such document outside, no. And then journaling is also very important, even on the experience, no, how they are able to answer even simple questions on how do they find the test. Okay, and then graphs and charts, that's also a kind of assessment that you can do. Poster demonstrations. Okay, and online interactive assessment. So, alam natin yan. We have Kahoot, we have quizzes, okay, and many more, okay, that has been already presented even here in KTS. Okay, so these are some of the things that we actually have to remember, no, when it comes to the process and the assessments. The teacher should redirect questions to students. The students are able to choose from a variety of topics, as what Sir Franco has also mentioned. The tests have different sections that offer multiple ways to demonstrate learning. In terms of content, they are able to choose books according to their interests. The teachers give both oral and written directions, okay, for students to be able to follow. And then teachers may provide a sample of a project so students can see the expected outcome. Students work with others in class. No, this is, I would like to highlight really working with others in class. Okay? And give them exercises to do at home also to reflect their learning. And then show an example of a quality work. No, show an example of a quality work so that students have an idea. All right? There, Teacher Franco. So those are for some of the things when you can differentiate output.
May mga tanong pa, no? Ang haba ng mga
Ang
tanong sa
dami
chat.
nga, ang
Ang
dami nga.
ganda,
Parang essay na nga eh.
sobrang ganda ng mga input natin sa chat, no. Pero anyway, just an addition to differentiating product or output, no, for differentiated learning. Okay, so you can also try tools for differentiating product, allowing for students choice, no, in ways that students express. Okay, so for example, you want them to express their understanding of a concept. Hindi naman siya kailangan laging paper and pencil evidence. Pwede siyang magpa-record ng video. Pwede rin akong, for example, mag-record ng voice ko. Pwede rin, for example, kung pwede rin ako mag-drawing, mag-illustrate, etc. Okay, so always try to open up the different ways na your students will be able to demonstrate learning. Okay, kasi learning can actually be assessed in multiple ways, no, and different tools, okay, na pwede natin gamitin. Okay. For writing, for example, you can do, for example, you're trying to measure their writing skills. Okay? So madami kang pwedeng gamitin tools. For example, Google Docs for voice typing, Google Sites, Blogger, KidVlog, okay, Book Creator, Storybird. Okay? All of these tools na will allow them to will allow you to measure their writing skills, okay, without necessarily limiting them to just one kind of demonstration. Okay? So allow them to demonstrate their skills or the writing skills in different ways. Okay? You can also do, for example, for video and audio. Okay, so there are different tools that you can use. Okay, Screencastify, WeVideo, okay, Toontastic, Touchcast, okay, Soundtrap. All of this no allows you to allows our students, okay, to produce output in audio and video format. Okay, although siyempre ang challenge dito sa mga nasa modular natin, no, setup natin. Okay. That's going to be something that we have to rethink, no, and to really design well, no, to be able to differentiate output, no, for modular format or for those that are printing modules. Okay. Infographic is also a good way, okay, of presenting information or presenting their understanding of your content. Okay, so you can use Canva. You know, ating kalimutan na meron po tayong libreng Canva account. Okay, K-12 Canva account, no, to have access to the premium features ni Canva. Okay, Lucid Press is both an application, is also an extension. Okay, that allows you to provide graphics, no, diagrams, okay, graphic organizers, okay, for your students. Okay, Adobe Spark, okay, also has a very interesting tools for that one, okay, for digital publishing. Google Slides, of course, not as specified that should be able to do the work. Okay? Pick to Chart, of course, lahat naman ng mga presentation makers like Microsoft PowerPoint presentation, even Keynote, no, for those who are Mac users. Okay? Pick to Chart and Google Earth also is a good way of demonstrating information in a graphic way. Okay, so these are different ways, no, different tools that you can use to differentiate output. Siguro ang reminder lang, Teacher Pao, sa ating mga teachers is that couple of things. So number one, okay, is that measuring your students' learning is no longer just in a paper pencil format. Okay, unlike before, no, when we were tested before by our teachers, no, in the 1990s, okay, that it's usually paper and pencil test. Okay, now your students, no, should be able to also demonstrate skills, no, in multitudes of ways. Okay? Okay, so kaya Teacher Pao, we'll just end our session, teachers, no? Para pag-usapan na, ito na, hihinga na tayo ng malalim sa mga konteksto natin dito sa Pilipinas. Pag-uusapan na po natin, no? Bago po natin i-close yung session natin for today, para lang ma-bring up natin itong mga usapin, no? sa Philippine education. So, teachers, okay, let us know your ideas about this, no? And habang pinag-uusapan po namin ni Teacher Pao ito. Teacher Pao, the first reality. Class size in the Philippines is usually big.
Yan, meron na nga nag-mention kanina 75, 60.
Yes.
Yan.
Oo, parang si Teacher Manolita White yata yun, ano?
I
That,
think,
na
yes.
paano nga ba tayo mag-differentiate ng mainstream students sa class of 75. So, ito talaga yung reality natin, no? Okay? Pero Teacher Pao, no, as mentioned earlier, okay, the differentiated learning does not really equate, no, or hindi naman siya kailangang individualized learning kasi iba pa yon. Okay? Yung
Yes.
individualized learning teachers is iba pa yon, ano? Mas rigorous yon, mas comprehensive in terms of like addressing individualities. Ang sinasabi lang natin sa differentiated learning is that as much possible, your teaching learning process is not monotonous. So hindi siya pwedeng, for example, lagi ka na lang nagle-lecture. Or hindi siya pwedeng, for example, lagi na lang tayo nagbi-video presentation. Okay, o nanonood ng video. So kailangan laging may dynamics, no? And different platforms, media, and ways, no, are being used and utilized, okay, either for the processes, for the content, or for the products of your teaching learning process. Okay?
Siguro sa akin ang take ko dito kasi ang laki, 'di ba? So, una nga yung concept of individualized instruction. DI is not individualized instruction. So,
Yes,
hindi
correct.
mo po iisipin na 75 yung hahawakan mo. Ang titingnan lang natin dyan, you have to give opportunities for different levels, for different kinds of learners. You provide as many opportunities for them to engage in your class. No, hindi naman sinasabi natin lahat, pero binibigyan mo ng opportunity, hindi lang isa. Kaya may nalulugi kasi isa lang yung binigay mo. Like for example, nag-direct instruction ka lang, nagsalita ka lang, meron palang student talaga na cannot learn in that manner or hirap talagang mag-grasp. Kung meron siyang mag-grasp, ganitong oras lang yung kaya niya. 'Di ba?
Correct.
So, you have to provide, no? Sabi nga
Pero,
natin, all access. All may
yes.
access. Yan.
Pero Teacher Pao, no, let's not
Yes.
also dishearten our teachers. Teachers, yung
Yes.
direct teaching, hindi naman yan problema talaga.
Yes.
Hindi yan problema. Sinasabi lang natin is that it can't be always direct teaching, no. At the most, siguro 15 minutes or 20 minutes of direct instruction should suffice, no, your synchronous sessions. Okay? Hindi siya pwedeng, like for example, if it's a 60-minute synchronous session, you're talking the whole time. It can't be that way. Okay, but of course, no, you should still talk because you are the primary designer and also the
Yes.
focal point of that class as well. Okay.
Kailangan lang may
Yes.
And-
Reality number 2, lack of resources. Gusto kong mag-differentiate pero wala naman akong resources to do that. And that's actually true, no? Pero ito teachers, no, para lang hindi din tayo, wag po tayong titingin lagi sa Western models. Yan yung isa sa like kong reminder sa mga teachers natin. For example, nanood tayo ng videos, okay? Kaya nga, as much possible, lagi kaming nagpo-provide ng mga local discussions like this.
Yes.
Para lagi pong nakatutok at nakakontextualize sa Pilipinas. Kasi pag talagang pinanood natin yung mga taga-ibang bansa on how they do differentiated learning, malulula ka sa dami ng resources nila that they have access to, no? To be able to do that. So don't look at them. Look at those Western situation because that's an entirely different context and it will only discourage you. So what you can do, teachers, that make use of what you have here, what we have. No, kung ano man yung mga limitations natin. Teacher Pao, no, I am 100% certain our Filipino teachers are one of the most innovative teachers in the world. Okay, we will always find ways. Okay, pero sinasabi Teacher Pao dito, hindi naman to yung long-term solution. Siyempre, hihingin pa rin natin, i-demand pa rin natin sa ating government, no, sa ating schools, no, yung pag-provide ng resources. But while those things are slowly coming in or being asked right now, we do our best, no, to make use of what we have. Okay, so it does not need to be grand, okay, use of like tools. Okay, it can be as simple as like flashcards, could be as simple as printed papers. Okay, that will make a difference. Okay.
Yeah, it's really not tool-driven, no? Rather, it's your, dito pumapasok yung creativity ni teacher. Yung sinasabi mong wala kang creativity, pero kung napapagalaw mo yung classroom mo ng despite all these lack of resources, you're being creative at that, no? So, pipiliin lang din natin kasi isipin mo nga, questions lang pala, DI na rin yun, di ba? You're already, engaging students, no? And differentiating students. Okay. Yes, let's go to,
Shout out to Sir Louis Jacob, no, creating
think
possibilities.
possibilities. Yes.
Okay, reality number 3, content-heavy curriculum. Tamaan na ang tatamaan dito sa reality number 3 na to, teachers, no? Pero we'll have to mention this. We really have to mention this. Even with the milk teachers, no? And Teacher Pao, okay, we still, no, realize or we still can see na sobrang content-heavy pa rin ang curriculum natin. And yung grabe yung demands, no, for the content to be delivered in one grade level, okay? That our teachers have no time to do differentiation anymore. Okay? Paano ka makakapag-differentiate kung ang dami mong kailangang ituro, no, at kailangang ma-deliver, or else papagalitan ka ng supervisor mo, or else mapapagalitan ka sa sa rating period, okay, or sa evaluation period. Okay? These are not things, no. So yun, no. So talagang kailangan pa rin natin galawin, okay? Syempre magsisimula talaga sa taas yan, lalo na sa mga public school teachers natin, on how to deload, okay? And audit our curriculum to give space, no, to a more meaningful teaching and learning process.
Yes, agree. Medyo yun talaga, medyo dito talaga kakailanganin natin yung tulong, no, of our government, no, to actually work on that kind of yung curriculum, kung paano mo ba maibababa lahat, no. But then again, ulitin natin, syempre a-adjust din naman tayo, no, but while working towards, achieving that, na sana maayos natin yung curriculum natin, what we have right now, kasi hindi naman pwedeng mag-stop yung mundo natin, no, and stop teaching. So what we really have to do is how to make this heavy curriculum bite-sized for students. So yun yung para at least, no, kung concept, no, dito pumapasok actually yung concept-based learning, na magturo ka ng isang concept kahit hindi ka magturo ng sobrang daming example. Pag nakuha ni bata yung concept and you provide opportunities kahit sa labas na ng classroom, kakayanin niya kahit papano na ma-retain, no, yung or ma-transfer yung learning niya to different applications.
Correct. Okay. At saka, Teacher Pao, ang ano naman talaga tingin, ang reality natin is that it's no longer what you know. Okay? Because everything can be Googled.
Yes.
Kaya nga sabi ko, teacher, lagi kong hinahamon ng mga educators natin, you really want to measure how authentic your lesson are, okay? Try mo i-Google yung lesson mo. If you can Google your lesson, your students can probably Google your lesson as well, okay? Then that loses its authenticity. And depth and rigor, yung rigor ng lessons mo. So you really want to create a lesson that challenges them, you'll have to make sure that your lessons, no, goes beyond being Googleable or Googleable.
Googleable.
I don't know what that the word ever exists na, pero yun yung measurement natin ngayon, because it's no longer what you know, it's what you can do with what you know. So regardless of what you have in your what concepts you know right now, if you can't really use them, it basically is a meaningless concept na that you have learned. Okay? Okay, reality number 4, standardized to na. Sakit nito for teachers. Lalo na sa mga sa mga public school teachers natin. Alam mo yung gustong-gusto mong mag-deviate, mag 21st century learning, tapos gawin 'tong lahat ng bagay na to, tapos bigla kang babalikan ng standard. Ito yung mga standardized national tests.
Yeah.
Na kailangan natin pag-prepare kasi we know for a fact, Teacher Pao, that it affects the school standing, the school's reputation, okay? So kailangan paghandaan to ng mga teachers natin. It takes time. Kaya talagang, at ang problema, Teacher Pao, is that these tests, okay, are actually molded, no, in a standardized perspective. So hindi ito talaga sumasagot sa 21st century learning, neither that it answers differentiated learning. So paano yung mga teachers natin?
Actually, sa aspetong to na talagang, kasi ako, I'm experiencing that. Pero yung sa akin kasi, in our curriculum, it's outside. Sa IB, no, meron din kaming test. No, na parang for 2 years, kailangan ito tuturo mo. Kung ganito lang yung oras na meron kami, paano matatapos yan? Pero merong exit test yung mga bata, di ba? So, same thing, no? So, what you can actually do is just to maximize what you can maximize. No? Wala akong magagawa kung hindi ko siya matatapos, pero magta-try ako. Itatry natin, and I'm sure our teachers are definitely trying their best, no, to make sure that learning is transferred, No, hindi memorized. Learning is transferred. Kasi minsan, kakayanin ng batang i-answer yung question. Nung ano lang, yung, ang tawag sa ganyan, parang street smart na bata. Kaya niyang kaya niya mag-context clues, kaya niya, you know, when you really learn the concepts. So, that's for another topic. But yeah,
Yes.
definitely naman, medyo ano din, disadvantageous din dito yung ano yung pen and paper lang siya.
Mm.
Di ba? Pen and paper lang kasi yung standardized test. What would
Yes,
you
yun yung problema natin. Yung may disconnect, no? Yung ang ganda, example, ang ganda ng differentiated learning, pero pagdating sa dulo, standardized test pa rin. So, yari yung mga estudyante natin. So, kawawa. So, talagang dapat buo siya, no? Kung differentiated content, differentiated din ang inyong process, differentiated din dapat ang ating output. And siguro yung last na natin, Teacher Pao, no? Talagang ito na yung iniiyak at inaano ng mga teachers kanina sa chat natin. Lack of time to plan, design, and implement differentiated learning. And it's just true. Teachers, no, we will never invalidate your feelings. Your feelings, your thoughts, your ideas about having lack of time to plan, to design, and implement differentiated learning are all valid. At it's na talaga sa hardest reality natin right now. No, our teachers are swamped with documents need to be submitted. Okay, parang for example nga, parang nawalan sila ng nahirapan sila magkaroon ng actual pahinga this August, no. But I still hope that you still get your much needed and much deserved rest, teachers, no. Yung mga meetings, Teacher Pao, pero alam mo, Teacher Pao, sa totoo lang, isa sa mga naging ano ko this pandemic is that many of the admins realize that there are no information that can be communicated not in a meeting. And that's one of the bright spots. Yes. That's a much needed and a much appreciated impact of the pandemic in education for our administrators. Okay? That they realize that there are information that can be can be sent in email, information that can be put in a Google Drive, information that can be put in a website. Okay? And meetings can be actually reduced to a minimum so that our teachers can actually have time, okay? Actual time, okay? To do the things they do best, which is to design instruction and to facilitate instruction.
Yes. Sa akin naman, if teachers are actually, siguro lang, no, para mabawasan siguro yung work, di ko alam kung gaano kalami mababawas. Pero gumagawa na tayo ng lesson plan. So, pag nagsimula tayong gumawa ng lesson plan, we have differentiation in mind already. So, kumbaga, hindi ka na maggagawa lang ng generic lesson plan. Gagawin mo na yung lesson plan na meron o wala ka na estudyante doon sa class na yon, pwede kasing sa ibang class meron, 'di ba? Ready ka na. No, magagawan mo na siya ng differentiation, meron ka ng ready-made activities. So, yun nga, babalikan natin yung pinaka-definition talaga ni differentiated learning. It is really intentional. So kung sisimulan na natin gumawa ng lesson plan, medyo mag-iisip na rin talaga tayo na, sige, paano ba natin siya i-differentiate? No, but yes, it takes time. We really know that, no, but andun na rin tayo, 'di ba? So kung mag-spend na rin naman tayo ng time, doon tayo sa time na makakapag-save ng time sa atin. Ano yung sinasabi natin, Sir Franco, parate na planning is not wasting your time. You're actually saving time, no? Ang haba-haba ng pinaplano ko pero actually hindi ka nagwo-waste ng time doon. Bakit? Kasi eventually magse-save ng time yun kasi na-target mo na lahat ng kailangan mong targetin all in one go. So yeah, so we just have to recognize that also. Pero kapit lang tayo, syempre, teachers. Kapit parate. Sabi nga ni si teacher, talaga, Rosmalin. Tama ba ako? Wala daw, love life.
Nako, ako meron na.
More.
Ako may Miss Jinky ako, Miss Rosemalin.
Ayun na nga, di ba? Ibig sabihin, kakayanin natin. Pero syempre, we are all in different spectrum, no? So, yeah.
So, teachers, we'd like to end our session with this particular quotation. This is from Dr. Justin Tart. Okay? As educators, the more we know about who we teach, the more effective we will be with what we teach. Taking time to get to know our students isn't fluff time; it's academic time. Okay, so always know, and we have always reminded all educators every time when we have a webinar, okay, that we always have to go back to our students, okay, because they are primarily our clients, no, and our responsibility in education. So maraming salamat, teachers. And now we open the floor for some questions maybe, or things you'd like to express, okay, or ask from us. No, we're not experts, okay, but we are from the ground. No, we are grassroots sharers, okay, sharing what we have experienced, that we are doing as well, and what we have experienced as well.
Yep. Check na.
I'm waiting. Thank you. Puro thank you. No? Puro palak. Maraming salamat, teachers. Na? Sobrang nakakatuwa lagi pag may mga ganyan. And Teacher Pao, no, kahit sobrang overtime tayo, the teachers are still here, no, remained with us, no, all throughout. We have an average of 452 viewers, no, 50 viewers, no, all throughout. Okay? So maraming salamat.
Yan, tingnan ko kung meron.
Oo, wala akong nakikitang questions eh.
Very recent question. Baka natabunan na. Yan, maraming na-refresh. Para kayong nasa college, ganon. Diba?
Yun naman talaga ang goal natin, no? Yung ma-refresh. Kasi alam na ng mga teachers natin, no? Sometimes hindi lang siya napapag-usapan. At sometimes siguro minsan meron lang mga misconceptions that we'd like to really untangle. Yun yung ginagawa talaga natin sa mga ganitong discussion, no? Untangle the misconceptions, demystify these topics for our teachers, no? So that our teachers have a more understanding, because if our teachers are empowered, no, or informed enough, okay, our teachers are definitely, no, competitive, no, at a global stage. At yan ang gusto talaga natin. Diyan nakatungtong ang kaagapay teacher support.
Correct. Yan. Actually, Sir Franco, may nakita ko dito. Sige, ipopost ko lang siya, ha. So, we have collaboration in a big class is not easy. Also, not all students participate in activities since they are behind cams. And since we teach students in 1 hour per week, teachers have to maximize the time. I think that's definitely the challenge here, no? Paano mo mapapagalaw yung mga batang ayaw gumalaw or hindi mo naman nakikita? Or even sa modular, kasi hindi mo rin naman nakikita kung sila yung gumagawa. Diba? So, but one thing is for sure, we have to, of course, reach out to the students. Where kung nasaan ba yung level, no, kung paano gagawin, kasi ang nakita kong mga tanong dito, paano mo gagawin yung collaboration sa sa modular, 'di ba, or sa mga batang hindi mo nakikita. So alamin muna natin where they are, okay, and then maybe for activities we can bank on family members, which reminds me, no, meron akong activity before na ang pinagawa dun sa Chinese class namin, kasi nga pandemic, di ba, nandiyan. So, ang lesson kasi is on speaking, oral. So, tinetest namin yung oral skills in Chinese. Students had to make a video, no, point and shoot lang naman. Kaya hindi kailangan ng masyadong editing. Kasi ang tinitingnan namin yung oral skills ng bata on how they do Chinese New Year, o ano ba pine-prepare nila, explain nyo lang yung food ninyo, or kung kasama nyo yung family ninyo. Natuwa kami kasi may mga students na yung buong family na nagpakita, nag-greet pa nga eh. Hinahanap lang namin yung bata eh, di ba? So we can maximize it kung sino man yung pwede nilang makasama, ano ba yung challenges, ano ba yung difficulties. Yan. So maybe even the use of exit checks, exit tickets, yan pwede nating magamit yan. Ayan. Sir Franco, how do we classify our learners? What tools can we use?
For classification, no, of your learners, okay, well, pwede tayo maganda ng mga surveys, kaya for well, I haven't really, meron tayong mga existing tests, okay, that we can actually maximize and use, okay, for knowing, no, the kind of learners our students are, what are the learning styles. Pero Teacher Pao, while these tools are hard to come by, no, we can actually simply use, for example, observation data from the classroom, data from other teachers, and data from last year as well. That's the reason why annotations, data is actually very important. Okay? Even assessment is actually very important as well as a source of data. Okay? So we can maximize all of this data, no, to be able to classify our learners. Okay? And again, Teacher Pao, we're not actually, that's the danger, no? We have to avoid hard classifying our students.
Yes.
Because teachers know, what we really, as communicated earlier, okay, we do not want to classify our learners unless an extreme case. Like for example, the student is actually not learning for such a long time, okay, and therefore we have to individualize learning. That's the only time we'll have to really dig deeper, into classifying what kind or the best way to help the student, okay. But otherwise, okay, our needs for knowing the learning styles of our students in our class is only because we wanted to variate or create variations in our approach. That's it. Okay, but not necessarily to like target each learning styles or learners. Okay, that's again a reminder. So ako, I do not like really encourage us, okay, like labeling ng like student A is gantong learner, no. We can't do that. It's well, no. Pwede naman siyang gawin, pero that might result to pigeonholing your students, okay, eventually, which is not good. Okay, Teacher Pao, I think we have, let me just put that down. Hanapin ko lang. Okay. So again, teachers, maraming salamat. If you have other questions, you can always contact us at Kaagapay Teacher Support. We'll be more than glad to answer your questions. Okay? This presentation will be available at our website. Okay, so if you have, okay, sorry, not that. Okay. All of our resources for this session will be sent via our Facebook page. In case if you are interested to download the presentations that we have used, okay, we will link them in our Facebook page as well as in our website. Okay. So maraming salamat, teachers. We'll now proceed with our evaluation link. Okay. So this is your evaluation link, teachers. Okay. https://tinyurl.com/August series T4. Okay. So please take note that you'll have to make sure that it works. Maraming salamat, Teacher Pao. That your name is correct. Also your emails, okay, so that we can send your certificates correctly. We will send them in 5 to 7 days after the end of the evaluation, which is on Monday, this Monday. So we have today, tomorrow, and until Monday to evaluate. And while you're at that, teachers, we can still entertain some of the questions.
Yes.
Thoughts, ideas. Okay.
All right. Okay, so actually sa akin, Sir Franco, meron lang akong gustong i-add while our teachers are actually doing that. We invite, aside from pushing for inquiry-based learning. Hi, Sir Jambi and Teacher Jinky! Hello! All right. Okay, so for me, I just like to add, aside from inquiry-based learning, we invite the students to join in the process. Sila na mismo yung mag-verbalize kung ano yung gusto nilang gawin, anong klaseng activities, ano yung nag-work sa kanila or ano yung favored tools nila. Kasi sa amin, ako, personally, tinanong ko yung mga students, kung anong pinaka gusto nila na application. So, yun ang gagawin. I think, Sir Franco, we can invite Sir Jello.
No, I'm not.
Is Sir Jello over there?
Yes. Sir Jello, pasok ka na.
Yan.
Pero alam mo, sa totoo lang, Teacher Pao, itong pagdating doon sa selection, that's actually a good strategy, yung allowing your students to voice out how they learn best. Pero we also have to make sure to communicate to our students that your preference is not necessarily always going to be the only way you're going to learn. Okay? Because the fact is that at one point or another, information are presented to you in a different way. And so therefore, that's also one of the benefits, Teacher Pao, of differentiated learning, that your students are constantly being exposed to different ways of processing information. Sometimes they get a video, sometimes they get an audio, sometimes they get an image, sometimes they get a text. Sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's easy, sometimes moderate questions. So that kind of variations exposes your students to a very dynamic teaching learning process. So hindi siya monotonous na lahat mahirap, or hindi siya monotonous na lahat galing sa teacher, di ba? Which is that happened to us before. Na lahat galing sa teacher, sometimes lahat mahirap. May mga ganung professor, for example, sa college, na lahat ng ng question mahirap. Okay? Something like that. Again, that's the benefit of differentiated learning. Okay? So essentially, you're preparing your students to learn better in different ways. Okay? Not only on attending their learning styles.
Sir Jello, so ano namang masasabi mo sa ating discussion today?
Oo. Masabi ko lang grabe ang daming learning, ang daming puwedeng gawin. Ayun nga, I was reading habang nagdi-discuss kayo sabi nga dito sa comment mga pangmalakasang talaga, speakers talaga ng mga invited ngayon, talagang grabe nung level. So, as I was listening and reading the comments, yes, totoo masakit minsan sa damdamin yung sitwasyon natin. But I think our teachers here are a testament that even if we are in this particular situation, lumalaban pa rin tayo. And I think siguro yun maganda ng mga insights talaga. Ako babalikan ko tong webinar nito kasi ang dami pwede from content, from assessments, so from the discussion on how you'll be able to utilize everything. And at the same time, without labeling. Yun ang mahalaga, ako feeling ko yun talaga ang mahalaga. Once we label kasi that etong estudyante ito, ano lang siya, visual learner, ito ganito lang. Yun nga, pigeonhole, yun ang trap dun eh. And giving the variety, I think ang mga teachers, sobrang ang daming binigay nila, Teacher Franco, tsaka ni Miss Pau. Ang daming strategies, ang daming ways on how we'll be able to utilize, to maximize. Kahit minsan, alam ko, kumbaga, we're stuck in a particular situation na parang wala tayong magawa. Kahit little by little, unti-unti, isa ng isa, yun nga, variation, giving variety, giving varied, different kinds of ways of how you'll be able to teach and how you'll be able to share that particular learning can be really a way for us to differentiate learning. So, sa akin, wag po tayong matakot. Hayaan po natin kung hindi man tayo suportahan, meron po mga taong susuporta sa inyo na tuloy lang po tayo kasi ito sabi nga ginagawa natin ito para sa bata. At the end of the day, it's always for our students. So even if it's difficult, let's try. Little by little, step by step, we'll be getting there.
Yes. May question sa chat natin na about multiple intelligences. Okay? Although ako mas acquainted talaga ako Gardner's so based may mga updates na kasi siya ngayon na may mga dinadagdag na, especially in the digital age. Okay? Pero siguro regardless it follows the same principle. Even if you're referring for example to the multiple intelligences, that's basically the same way. It also emphasizes that your students are stronger at one point, and you may capitalize on this particular intelligences to engage them into your classes, but not necessarily pigeonhole them in that particular intelligence. That happened, Teacher Pau, in many of our geniuses before yung mga pinopromote before na anong gatas to? Nakalimutan ko tong gatas na to. Batang sige, pero merong gatas na yung napag uminom ka nito magiging genius ka, pero what happens that ayun, bagat i-mention yung product, baka baka ma-copyright tayo, Hindi, pero yung klase ng ganun is that it pigeonhole our students, or yung mga learners na yun in a particular perspective, Ito ganitong classical learner, and therefore ganito yung dapat mo ma-achieve, And I still remember that one of them actually grew into becoming someone else, like not into a scientist, but rather becoming a photographer na si
yes,
I'm not mistaken.
Shaira.
Si Shaira, di ba? She was pushed to becoming a scientist, like into the sciences, but eventually found her way into into photography, which is she's doing really well. She's one of the a sought after photographer now in the country.
Yeah.
That's the kind of
Actually, regarding that with multiple intelligences, ikaw mismo, as a teacher, para mas magets natin yung concept na to, if you take the multiple intelligence tests, I'm pretty sure you will not get 0 in majority of it. No. It will be a combination of results. No? May strong suit ka, may not strong suit ka. So, kung dati naniniwala tayo na pag magaling sa math, may hindi magaling sa English. Yung ganon, di ba? May ganong concept. Hindi na siya eh. Kasi may lumalabas na tao na hindi magiging isang magaling na mathematician ng isang tao kung hindi niya na-communicate ng maayos. And that requires skills in English as well. So I really believe na it is in conjunction with all, no? Ang sinasabi talaga natin dito, wag mong ikahon yung mga bata sa isang type of learning lang. Kaya ang gagawin mo, mag-create ka ng opportunities for them to express themselves in different ways. No, the targets, different kinds of learning styles. There.
Teacher Pao, no, we have to also understand that when it comes to subject areas, hindi naman ngayon, for example, hindi ka pwedeng magaling lang sa hindi pwedeng yung knowledge lang sa isang subject area yung ginagamit mo. Because the truth of the fact right now is yung idea ng transdisciplinarity or disciplines no coming together to solve complex problems. Before that works kasi problems before are not as complex pero ngayon you need all your knowledge no, from all disciplines. Say for example that COVID-19 vaccine was not like derived no simply by using your knowledge about science. It definitely made use of like your math, your collaboration as well, social skills mo because people had to work together, etc. Okay, that kind of and of course, yung sabi mo kanina, communication. Kung hindi na makikipag-communicate ang mga tao, no, your knowledge are textbook knowledge. And that's okay. Okay, so that's it. I think Teacher Pao no, and Teacher Jello. Again, teachers, maraming salamat. Okay, so we'll leave the evaluation link for a while until you finish them. Okay. We'll see you two on Thursday for the 5th installment of our August series. Okay? We're going to have Sir Jello, of course. Don't forget that. Okay? They'll be discussing the different edtech tools that we can use for accessibility and inclusion. Okay?
Yan,
and of course, we're gonna...
Ang hirap sundan ng mga Google at
No? Kayang-kaya yan.
So, hindi namin alam kung paano may didiscuss.
Yes, maraming salamat, teachers. And we'll see you again next week.
Sir Franco, babatiin ko lang ng mabilisan si Miss Jobel Cordero, one of our speakers. It's her birthday today. Happy birthday,
Happy birthday, Miss Jobel.
And hi, Miss Rosh. Okay. Bye.
Bye po. Thank you. Have a nice weekend, teachers.